This is TeaTime. I am joined by the wonderful Emi, the fabulous Lara. Talk about some incredible things, about the future of Guild Wars 2, the future of the game that we've been playing for 10 years. I'm going to talk about the next 10 all in one.
In my mind, I'm kind of thinking, okay, they're doing all of this prep work. Where's kind of like the natural conclusion of this prep work, right? So most likely more end game difficult content. So maybe Copium, possibly a Wing 8, right? Because if we think about it like in terms of continuity, like Heart of Thorns had raids, Path of Fire had raids, and End of Dragons, like, you know, I feel like just for consistency, I feel like they should have raids.
Here's an interesting one. This might be a hot topic, and I am incredibly curious how this one is going to turn out when they actually drop this, when the next content comes out. Do you think ArenaNet want to make the game harder?
Here's actually the thing that like I find very strange. Why is Ritualist gear still so hard to get? Oh yeah, you need a Ritualist back piece? Ah, just make a legendary.
You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think in some ways, new content is almost a little bit overrated. I think everyone is over-fixated on things being new rather than actually fixing what's here. Boom. We're not late. Boom. I like that. That's good. Welcome, friends. Welcome, gamers. Finally. Yes, finally. Shall I just go back? Let's just go back. I'm just going to go back to the other screen, actually. You know, do you want a little bit more? Yeah? You enjoy the nice, soothing Guild Wars 2 music and, you know, the teapot artwork there? Yeah, maybe maybe you should enjoy it a little bit more. Okay? Look, see the chat. They want to go back. They don't want to see us. They want to see the loading screen. But anyway, welcome everyone. Welcome to a very new form of TeaTime. You might be noticing that Sneb isn't here. And there's a good reason for that. And, you know, I don't like to say this. I don't like to get toxic. And I'm going to open this TeaTime getting a little bit toxic here. There's going to be a trial now to get on TeaTime. It's going to be very exclusive. And it's Voidwalkers only, actually. Yeah, it's only players who have beaten...
Oh,
no, he doesn't. He doesn't have it. No, he doesn't have that. He does not have that. No, he doesn't have it. No, he won't. No, he's Hardstuck Jawmag. They can't even do first screen. It's over. Yeah.
These are lies. These are massive lies.
I know he was filling for a lot of groups, but I think everyone, once they actually get very close to the end, suddenly you don't need fills anymore because everyone wants to kill.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
oh no.
Like we're at Mordramoth. Yeah, I can probably skip a few, right? Like, yeah, I can slack off, right? But then when it's like, oh, Sue on phase 2? Okay, right. Okay, I'm going to get up an hour early. I'm going to make sure they don't fill my spot. Like, I've got to be in there. It's true. It is true. but anyway, that's of course a joke. Sneb is not here. He's very busy, actually, right now. You know, he's busy being, well, he was at PAX, but also... you know, he's created, he's spawned, he's created a new player for Guild Wars 2. He's doing his part to get those Steam numbers up, right? You know, he's getting that even higher than it already is. But anyway, that's not really the topic of this TeaTime. What is the topic of this?
Yeah, it's
a good intro. You know, we've got to give people the background information. We've got to keep people in the loop with what's going on, right? It's not just about the game. It's about all of the other weird stuff that's going on. In the background. But anyway, this is TeaTime. I am joined by the wonderful Emi, the fabulous Lara. Talk about some incredible things, about the future of Guild Wars 2, the future of the game that we've been playing for 10 years. I'm going to talk about the next 10 all in one. Maybe not that far, but a little bit far, actually, because we've actually now kind of come to the end of the roadmap. In fact, there's one more thing left over. The next episode is coming pretty soon, actually. It's really crept up on me, as it turns out. I believe it's on the 14th, if I am not mistaken, is episode number 4 of Living Worlds. There'll be one more after that. But, of course, around that time, I'd certainly be expecting to hear a little bit more, actually, about what's coming next. We also know there's a balance patch coming up as well in October. That's a very exciting one because, you know, there are just some things that seem to be very sticky in the metagame right now. You just can't get rid of them. But anyway, I think I'll just kind of open it up here a lot. Actually, I don't really have any particular point that I want to hit here. I'm just super curious, like, where do you guys think we're at right now? Like, what's going to be next? What are the next big steps for Guild Wars 2 in any game mode, any time, in any sense? Hit me with it. What you got?
For me, the big thing I'm waiting for is just like the next, like, I guess, like story release, like the brand new stuff. They've mentioned that there's going to be a new Canva map and there's going to be more story coming out in Canva. I've actually been speculating about that a lot because they're being a bit mysterious about it. Like, everyone kind of assumes that they're going to do Living World Season 6, but they haven't actually called it Season 6. They've just been like, more story, new location in Canva, and they keep being like singular. That is just, I guess, like my thing on the horizon. Like, where is the story going to go? Story could go like anywhere. What kind of content is it even going to be? I think they're going to change their format. I think that the ArenaNet is basically at the point where they're like, hey, we've done Living Worlds. Wasn't really working out super well for the player-based numbers, it looks like. I really like Season 4 and also actually like a lot of Iceboot Saga 2, but I think those were kind of, looking at player numbers, kind of the low numbers ages. I think they might be just like rethinking it, which is why they haven't called it Living World so far. They're just like, there's more story, there's more Canva. I'm very, very curious, but I think they're gonna do something brand new, and kind of feels like it's on the horizon a bit. We've got like 2 more episodes for Season 1 coming. We've got a strike mission coming, which is gonna be hype. But after that, I'm guessing we're going to the new stuff, right? So yeah, that's. I've been spending too many hours just like lore speculating, like what would the story even be? But it's hard because it's like nothing, right? There's like some teasers with like a sea monster and stuff, but we don't know where the story's gonna go at all. So yeah, it's very fun to speculate about because I can just come up with anything. I can come up with all these like wild ideas that are never going to happen, but it's possible, which makes it fun, I suppose.
Yeah, I think a really big thing is, for me, they've been saying like, they want strike missions to kind of be the bridge between like casual players and then like the more veteran players and more hardcore content. And then they've also been doing all of these things in like the open world to kind of like make people more aware of like mechanics that happen, which we saw with like the core bosses rework. In my mind, I'm kind of thinking, okay, they're doing all of this prep work. Where's kind of like the natural conclusion of this prep work, right? So most likely more end game difficult content. So maybe Copium, possibly a Wing 8, right? Because if we think about it like in terms of continuity, like Heart of Thorns had raids, Path of Fire had raids, and End of Dragons, like, I feel like just for consistency, I feel like they should have raids. Again, maybe Copium, but I feel like that's kind of what they've been hinting at. If not more raids, then at least a bigger emphasis on actually like strike missions and stuff. Like they've already been adding in the strike missions for the early seasons, so possibly more strike missions with, let's say, like the core story, like the 1 through 80 experience. Like maybe make some of those bosses into them. Yeah, it's very Copium, but like it's very open-ended right now. It's like Lara said, like they kind of wrapped up a lot of things in nice, neat, pretty bows, like, and then at this point they've been doing a lot of marketing. They've been exploring things that, like, I remember a few months, I was like, even a few months ago, if you said, oh, ArenaNet is going to start doing Twitch drops, everyone would have been like, oh no, they won't. They haven't like cared about the Twitch industry or the Twitch sphere like in ages. Like nobody cares about watching Guild Wars 2. They don't care about content creation, all of that kind of stuff. And then they surprised us, and then they did Twitch drops, and then they've been doing partnerships with various like Twitch streams and stuff, like the whole HelloFresh campaign. And then like it also just things like, oh, ArenaNet's like gonna never do balance patches like outside of once every 6 months, and now we've already gotten several hot fixes. Like, in the span of like 3 months, we've gotten 3 different balance patches, which is like, they're surprising us. I hope that this will be another surprise that's on the horizon.
Oh, by the way, to add to that really quickly, I've been hearing that they've been doing Twitch ads the past couple days. I keep seeing people in my chats who are like, I just got a Guild Wars 2 Twitch ad. So yeah, you're completely right. They're really like actually like marketing hard right now. Mm-hmm. Feels like it might be leading somewhere,
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, I think the really interesting thing about the raid, and I'd love to ask you this question. Actually, here's the big question: what do you think is the reason? Let's imagine we have this raid wing and it's got 3 bosses in it. Why would ArenaNet release a raid wing instead of 3 strike missions? Because this is the, I would love a Wing 8 as well. And I'm super interested in exploring. Don't worry, I will not forget the format change from Lara. That's a really interesting topic I definitely want to dive into, actually. But this raid one, I think, definitely should be talked about and addressed, because I think it's a really interesting question. Why do you think, why are raids good? Why is that better? Why would you rather have a raid than 3 strikes?
I think for me, there's several reasons, and none of them are really functional, so to speak, right? I think it's more of like perception, right, of the game. I think if you were to talk to any other MMO player and be like, yeah, Guild Wars 2 has strike missions, everyone's just going to have a bunch of question marks over their head, right? Like, what are strike missions? I've never heard of that before. Something blah, 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 blah. But if you tell another MMO player from a different game, like, yeah, Guild Wars 2 has been releasing a lot of new raids. Like, that's a pretty universal concept. Right? Like the idea that, yeah, there is this structured end game content that you can kind of strive for, like, you know, after you've like mastered the basics. I think that's one reason. I don't know if that's strong enough of a reason for them to actually invest the money into that, but that is one, I think, rather compelling reason. Another one I think is, aren't raids more story driven than strike missions? Like you usually actually have like voice lines that happen in the raids that you don't really get anywhere else. And I feel like it also usually is like an extension or like kind of like a side thing on the story. And I feel like Guild Wars 2 has a pretty big emphasis on like story, especially for like, you know, the casual players and stuff, like the people that never really step into endgame. I actually know a few people that specifically said like, you know, they always feel like they kind of missed out on some aspects of the story just because they never had a group to do raids with. So, yeah.
Actually, I'm not even, for me personally, I don't even care if it's raids or strikes. Because like, if I would look at the previous like 4 strike CMs that we got, I really like all 4 of those. I like the previous 4 strike CMs more than like Wing 7, you know? Like,
Yeah,
I like
I
Wing
think they're
7.
just better designed encounters. I think that's a
Yeah.
really big thing. They're just more fun, I think, regardless of how they're marketed as either strike missions or raids. But like, I think a big thing is just whenever people come into my chat and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing strike missions today. Like, all are welcome. Anyone can come, all that kind of stuff. Almost always there's like a sort of confusion. It's like, you know, what are strike missions? Why are they different
Yeah.
from raids? Because a lot of times people come from other MMO spheres, right? Like they know this idea of dungeons and raids. And then when you kind of like, I guess, blur the line a little bit with just even like the naming convention and like the structure of it, I think people are just more hesitant to get into it. But at the same time, I will also say, I think strike missions, the big thing they have is if you release it little by little, you can kind of drag out that hype, right? It's like every subsequent strike mission that we had Aetherblade, and then Anka, and then Kaineng, and then Harvest Temple. That spanned a release schedule of over 4 months, right? But with the raid, you kind of just slap it out there, and then people just kind of go at it, and it'll probably already be like, people will be over it like in a month, if even like a week. So I think there's reasons why they have not chosen to continue the raid format, but I do think like it would be interesting. We can have both.
Yeah. That's the big thing for me is, I think if ArenaNet were going to do a raid, there would need to be a really good reason for it. It would have to be, okay, why is adding this going to deliver us insane value over just releasing strike missions? And, you know, I think that, weirdly enough, a lot of the things about raids that we're talking about here, kind of like, oh yeah, the immersion factor, right? Like the added story, right? The fact that it's new and novel, right? And I think another really big thing with raids, certainly for players who are, you know, a bit sweatier, bit more into the end game stuff, is like, oh yeah, this is for me, right? I have been made, this raid has been created for me to enjoy, right? I think in a way though, that is already happening with strikes, right? Like something like Harvest Temple challenge mode, and honestly, all of the challenge modes, that only exists because of the sweat lords in the game. Like, there's no reason to add that. Like, you aren't having like, oh yeah, look, every single player is gonna have a great time in Harvest Temple challenge mode. No, that's probably not gonna happen. I know that it's way more obvious when you're dealing with a raid, but I think that a lot of the things, even the things that kind of got talked about here, I feel like you kind of have that in strikes as well. And there's a lot of advantages to strike missions, I think, including the fact that, well, you know, you don't have to develop an entirely new story and new voice lines and new characters and new everything, right? Because it's all baked into the story. So I think raids, as much as I hate to say this, I genuinely hate to say this, because I do like all the things you're describing there. I love the fact that it's you know, you're delving into this environment, you're moving through boss after boss, and every boss you beat, it kind of unlocks more story in a way. It unlocks more of the mystery. That is really cool. It's a really immersive experience. But again, it just seems to me that raids aren't actually worth it from ArenaNet's perspective anymore. With kind of like with the limitations we know they have, and you know, seeing as strike missions, I think, deliver a lot of what players actually want, and sacrifice very little. Actually, it's a very interesting thing. You know, I struggle to see ArenaNet releasing a raid, certainly anytime soon, purely because I think the strike formula works so well, and it's like this very distilled version of, in a way, the raiding experience, right? Like it's the raidiest part of raids have been turned into strike missions and strike mission challenge modes.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Yeah.
I think the thing is just, for me, like, I like the encounters in both. And I don't think that encounters are better in raids or in strikes. It's just an encounter, right? Because the thing about raids is that you get this whole thing around it, right? You get like a whole new map, you get like a whole new extra story, which makes strikes like so much more economical, right?
Yeah.
Because they can just do story, they can do normal mode, they can do challenge modes, and they just do one piece of art, you know, they reuse that for all the different encounters. I think that might mean that they might stick to strikes, because they can do the really hard fights without having to do all the extra story. However, I do think there would be really big hype if they did the raids. And
Yeah.
even if it doesn't make that much sense, because the fights and strikes are awesome too, I do think that just people in the community would be really happy. Like, just the word raids is kind of magical to a lot of people, I think. Even if the encounters aren't that different. Actually, I've been, like I said, I was doing a little story speculation. There's been a lot of like hints at Raizu Palace and something going on in Raizu Palace. A lot of people are like, yo, Raizu Palace will be the next story. I actually think it might be possible that the story is something else and then Raizu Palace is like a raid, which would be really cool. But again, though, it's hard to justify because they can just do the hard fights. Like, when you do a raid the first couple times, the story's really cool and like the area's really cool. But after a couple tries, you just care about the fight, right? I don't go into Wing 6 again to listen to all of Zomro's dialogue again. I kind of do listen to his dialogue again, to be honest. But still, like, to me, strikes kind of feel like raids 2.0 right now.
Yeah, no,
But I
definitely.
still like a raid. It would be hype. It would be fun.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on a really big thing that I think matters to ArenaNet a lot, which is that, their development space is obviously limited, right? It's expensive to hire engineers, and it's very expensive to like start projects that you potentially won't get that much value out of. So I think reusing as like certain things is very, very good. And I think that's where the strike missions really shine, right? Because they're the same character models, they're the same textures. They're pretty much like, the same attacks in story mode versus the strike missions versus the CM like versions and stuff. So they don't have to reuse that developer energy. But I think, I guess kind of hinting at what you were saying before, where, they might change the format a little bit. Like, like 3-4 years ago, a lot of people said, oh, they're never going to come out with like any more endgame content whatsoever. But they might, right? And I think that's like really where the topic of this TeaTime is. It's like, what could they possibly do? Maybe even just whispering in ArenaNet's ear a little bit, like, hey, people would be really hype about this kind of stuff. Which is why I think any sort of endgame content, like imagine if they like revitalize dungeons, right? Like rework the whole dungeon system, since that's kind of the first exposure to endgame content or any sort of structured instance content in the entire Guild Wars 2. I think that would also be really cool. So
yeah. It's a good one. It's a very interesting question. I think what you could do is there could be like a strike mission that's got more than one bosses in it, but more than one bosses in it. Wow, dude, I'm talking like I've been watching too much Lord of the Rings. Yeah, no, the thing is that at that point, then it's not even a strike mission anymore, right? Like, what even is that? What does that even mean? Then you just made a raid. Okay, at that point, congratulations. It's a tough one. I think it will be very interesting to see where it goes. Like the thing that I miss about raids is kind of like the speed running component, right? There's much less of a movement component, or basically none in strikes. So there's no like speed running. It means I can't run a raid tournament. I can't run a strike tournament. That makes zero sense, and that means I can't make content, so that means ArenaNet needs to bend to my will so that I can, right? There it is. Job done.
I feel the same. Like, I make my musical tries to raids videos and people are like, it's not even raids. And I'm like, it's the same thing. It's literally almost the same. And they're like, no, but it's not a raid. I'm like, ArenaNet, please make raids so I can make more of those videos.
Exactly.
Appreciate it.
We need our YouTube content. YouTube and Twitch content needs to happen. But Anyway, to go to the other topic, I think that was something fascinating that you brought up there, Lara. So you think that they might go a different direction with living world content. I'm tempted to almost be a little bit cynical and this is just ArenaNet being ArenaNet and being really weird with communication. Like they're like, oh, it's not season 5, it's the Icebrood Saga. They now have given in and named it season 5 as well, by the way, of course, which is quite funny to me. But yeah, what do you think they might do with the content? Are you expecting like just one huge map and that's it? Or what could it be?
Actually, yeah, that is what I'm expecting. Like the thing is, they're mysterious. Like instead of just being like, we started working on more living world, they were like, we're working on a new Canva map, singular. And actually, there was an interview with Bobby Stein this week, which I went and analyzed every single word, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but it kind of went like, we're going to, in the next couple story releases, we're going to a new location in Canva, like location, singular. And they're not calling it living world. So I'm just like sitting here like guessing, like, what does this mean? Like I'm might be absolutely overanalyzing this. It might just be living world season 6, but looking back, Icebrood Saga was kind of a struggle in a way. They kind of halfway through Icebrood Saga, it felt like they kind of had to like shift directions a bit to make the expansion, right? Again, we don't know exactly what it was like in the studio, but that's kind of what it felt like with Champions. Like they had to sort of like change direction with Icebrood Saga halfway through. I think what ArenaNet might be doing is, because we know that they're gonna make a new expansion, I think instead of doing an entire season 6 with 6 brand new maps and all that sort of stuff, I think they might be trying to be more efficient. I think they might be trying to like be a bit more economical so that they can easily produce an expansion at the same time as doing, I guess, the next season. So instead of like putting the whole studio on making a new season, doing more something maybe a bit less content heavy, but still like being really smart about it, and then making the expansion at the same time. I might be entirely grasping at straws here. This is just me analyzing like random sentences and blog posts.
I
But
think,
just yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's really weird when they've tried to do really big maps in the past. I think what ends up happening is people kind of like centralize into very specific points of that map anyways, right? Like I'm thinking like, for example, New Kaining, right? It's like that is a massive map. And whenever there's the meta that happens, or whenever there's like specific events that you need to do, whenever those happens, you see a lot of people there, right? Like everyone kind of like clusters there. You have 50 people all kind of like doing like the same event and stuff. But whenever those things aren't happening, I feel like the map feels very empty. And I remember they said before that it's partly because they just can't load that many textures, right? Otherwise, the game just breaks. So I'm a bit worried if they decide to do a singular, very, very large map. But I guess if they were to implement that idea, I think it'd be really interesting if they maybe cut the map up into different areas, right? Like I don't know, like New Cantha West and New Cantha East, and they're all kind of like thematically like the same, but it's a larger area. I don't know. I guess I'm just mostly concerned about like the performance aspect. Like I think a lot of people's computers already struggle quite a bit in some of the bigger maps. Yeah.
The thing is, I don't even necessarily think it has to be like really big, but I think they might just like, again, and like back in like season 4 and season 3, we got like a map every episode, right? We got like these kind of tiny maps, and it would just be map. And then in Icebrood Saga, they kind of scaled that down, right? They were
Yeah.
like, we're not going to do 1 map per episode, but we're going to have like a couple less maps. And I actually think that works really well, because I think a lot of those Icebrood Saga maps are like very high quality. There's a bit more stuff to do. Especially in season 3, you kind of had these maps. You would kind of go there, do your achievements, maybe do some stuff for Aurora, and then you're kind of done. So I think it makes more sense to focus on maybe quality over quantity. And I think that's what they might be doing. The thing is, though, again, me overanalyzing that interview, they said something like, the next couple story releases will take place in a new location. So that doesn't necessarily mean that 1 location means 1 map. It could be like multiple maps on the Battle Isles or something. I don't know. That could happen as well. But I don't think they've ever said that they're working on maps. I think every single time they've mentioned what's happening, they've been like map, location, and that just makes me suspicious, you know?
I guess maybe another thing to consider is maybe assume like, they do come out with multiple maps and everything. They could also be rewriting the formula for how people approach those maps, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I think the best example I can think of is like the different way that they've done meta events, right? Like there are some meta events that are timed, and then there are other meta events that like just happen on a rotation, right? So I'm thinking like Silver Waste or Dragonfall or like that sort of thing, right? I think that they've been very experimental. I think especially in Icebreed Saga, where they were trying out a lot of things, and some things worked, other things didn't. And I'd be really interested to see if they make the dynamic event system maybe, I don't know, I guess a bit more dynamic in like the new maps. Maybe just like a different way to actually like approach the game. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I think you're onto something though. I think that instead of just doing what they did before, I think they're gonna experiment a bit. That's just everything feels like, it's a bit mysterious. There's a bit of experimental stuff going on. And just I think that's especially with like, the expansion being like in early developments, they might be making sure to not stretch themselves too thin. I'm curious. I'm really excited to see what they do though. I'm very excited.
It's certainly the big thing that we'll hopefully find out about soon, right? Like what is next? It's very suspicious, as you say, right? The fact that in a way they've told us more about the next expansion. Or rather, we know that's coming, but we don't really know what's happening with the actual next content in the game whatsoever, which I think is very interesting. It is very suspicious. I think I'm very much inclined to agree with you as well. It's almost in the same vein as strike missions, right? Strike missions are kind of a slightly more economical in terms of development time version of what raids are, right? Of the end game anyway. And I can definitely see them trying to do that a little bit with the Living World as well, right? The Living World is probably insanely expensive to develop. They give it away for free as well, by the way, which, that's something, right? And then they only sell it for 200 gems. I've been playing on a new account recently, and it actually blows my mind. You can buy a new episode for 55 gold. That's actually insane, like how easy it is to get all of the story and how cheap all of it is. Even if you haven't got it unlocked for free, right? It's really, really interesting. But yeah, it really is quite something, and I could certainly see them doing some stuff very much in the vein of. It almost reminds me a bit of Living Story Season 1, right? Like in Living World 1 and Icebreed Saga, right? Where you have one map that slowly expanded. Like that kind of happened with Dry Top and with Silver Waste, right? It would just, the map would get bigger and more things would appear on it as time goes on. I could certainly see them going in that approach. Because, again, I think it's really worth noting, Icebreed Saga, it obviously wasn't super well received. That was mostly because of the ending. The actual early maps were actually really well received. I think they got praised a lot for their storytelling. Certainly some of the events, like I think the Bureau Marches first half of the event, that's a bit meh. The ice golem, although it does look pretty cool actually, so I'll give it that. But the gameplay isn't that great. But yeah, a lot of the design there actually got praised a lot. Even Drizzlewood, right? I think Drizzlewood, is a very popular map. People really liked it. It's certainly very cinematic, right? Particularly the second half, in my opinion, actually, of Drizzlewood. So a lot of that was actually very well received and still sees a lot of play. To this day, actually. So I could certainly see them going in that direction. And that might even lend itself a little bit a bit better to the story elements, because as you mentioned, like, what are we doing? Where are we going? Who even knows? And I think that actually having like one map that slowly expands, have a little mini story, and then go to another one, I think that actually will mean that the story can stay very, very cohesive without having to have everything connected in one go. I think ArenaNet are probably slightly regretting the fact that they decided to say, we're going to do a story that literally takes 10 years. So a new player has to start from core Tyria, and you have to play through every single season in order for the story to make sense, right? I think it makes a lot more sense from ArenaNet's perspective to actually have stories and characters that make sense if you're just dropping in, right? If you're a new player, you can go and play Season 6, and it will make sense. You don't have to go, wait, who's Aurene? Who's Marjorie? Who's Kazakh? Why are they calling me the commander, right? Like all of this, like, insane stuff that's going on. I think we might be seeing some much more self-contained stories, not like a Fractal, like it's just completely out of nowhere and it's like borderline nonsense, right? And it's just some like random thing that happened, or maybe happened, or maybe didn't happen in an alternate universe or whatever. I think that we're going to be seeing things that are going to be more easy just to leap into, like a little mini story. It's fun. You do a thing. I don't know. We get rid of all of the undead, right, from the dead area of Kaineng. We go and battle the sea monster. We go and pet a turtle in the turtle world. We go to Kirin Peak, and it's secretly Wing 8 the entire time. It's possible.
Copium.
Yeah.
People, you can't just like, reveal all these secrets on stream right now. People just spoiling the entire story. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I will say something from personal experience, because I didn't start playing from the very, very beginning of the game. I think I actually started playing after they kind of retired the living world, like especially episode 1 and 2. So I dropped into the game and I had no idea who these characters were. And even though I heard a lot of people saying, oh yeah, the Guild Wars 2 story is actually like pretty good, especially like for an MMO, like there's not too many characters that you need to keep track of. I had almost no emotional connection to the characters whatsoever. And if it had not been for end-game content, I am almost certain I would have quit the game. So that just kind of just like the honest truth. And I think a lot of people will probably be able to resonate with that, because I think in a way, I think it's also partly the content creators to blame. It's like I've heard a lot of people say, like, first level 1 through 80 experience is kind of like a glorified trial for the game. All of the meat of the game is like in level 80 experience and that sort of thing. And I think it really drives a lot of players to like kind of rush their way through the early experiences instead of actually following along with the story. And then when they get to level 80, yeah, sure, the gameplay is a lot better, the event system is a lot better. But I think one of the main drives that a lot of people do come to the game for is like, the characters, kind of that nostalgia from Guild Wars 1. And then they don't really have that when they skip all of this previous living world stuff. So, yeah.
Which is why it's really nice that season 1 is coming back.
Yeah, right? I agree. I was like kind of playing back there and I was like, oh, that's why they're all mad at each other. Like, I remember like I was so confused why I think it was Logan and Ritlock were like at each other's throats the entire time. I was like, can't we just get along? And then actually replaying through, I was like, oh, I see why now. So yeah.
Now I understand.
So
yeah, that's super. It's a really weird one as a content creator, I think, because on the one hand you want to say, oh yeah, play through all of it 1 to 80, right, and it's going to be great, you're going to have a great time. But on the other hand, it's very much okay. I played through season 2 for Season of the Dragons. It is not like the modern game, okay, and
I agree.
It's not bad. But there's an awful lot of me standing listening to NPCs talk. There's quite a lot of that, right? It's a little light on the gameplay sometimes when you're just running around.
They've gotten better at it, Story's gotten better, game has gotten better.
Yeah, I think
that's painful when you go back.
Yeah, that's a good thing, I think, is this game is quite old. I mean, we literally, over the course of 10 years, right? So obviously the strategies that they employed at the start of the game are going to be very different from the strategies that they're doing right now. So it's like, it's really hard for me to like tell people, oh yeah, like, the game is like really, really good. And then they go through the early experience and I'm just like, oh wait, no. It's like different later. So I think I think that's also why I was pushing back a little bit on like the idea that they're gonna completely rewrite the way that they approach the game, because then it will feel like a very different game. And I think we've already seen that a lot. Like the experiences that you have from 1 to 80 is very different from the experience that you have when you hit like Heart of Thorns. And when you get to Heart of Thorns, it's very, very different when like you get into like the Living World episode. So it's like, it definitely feels very jarring. So I'm really interested to see if they can introduce it in a way that actually like kind of makes sense for someone who hasn't played the game for however many hours we've played it, like what, 10, 20,000 hours and stuff. So yeah.
It's actually been so wild to see like all the new Steam players. I've seen some Steam players be like, they're playing like the personal story and then get like these cutscenes, right, where there's one NPC on one side and one NPC on the other side. And I've seen people be like, I don't like this part. And I'm like, yeah, they stopped doing that like 9 years ago, but you're just playing the content from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's wild how much the game has changed over the years.
That's why I really think a lot of the content we'll see, and I think this, I mean, to go even further in the future, I am going to be extremely interested to see what they do with the next expansion. I actually wouldn't be at all surprised if they kind of write out a lot of the characters that we have right now. And in a way, we kind of have this, right? Like Ritlock, he's doing politics stuff now. Logan is, you know, he's wearing civilian clothes and, I don't know, like worshipping Queen Jenna's feet, right? Like Marjorie and Casimir are kind of getting married. They're having a good time. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they just got shuffled away a little bit. Like season 6, they kind of get shuffled a little bit. It's like, okay, right, you go stand over there. And then with the expansion, we actually have like a very much a new cast of characters that come into play, actually. Wouldn't be surprised at all to, yeah, go, Kanaka's running a nightclub. He can't come adventuring with us. He's going crazy. Yeah, I could absolutely see some kind of wrapping up stories happening in season 6, and then we go totally fresh for the next expansion. That would be my preference, actually, because that means that when new players join the game, they can get straight into the action, right? I've always said that, oh man, it's super weird that because when if I'm going to go play World of Warcraft, right? And I'm not talking about classic here, I'm talking about, World of Warcraft. And I would definitely do this in Final Fantasy as well. I do not want to play the content from 8 years ago, because look, all my friends are playing the new expansion. I want to play the new expansion. Why am I at level 1 and they're in the new expansion? What the hell? I have to play through everything to catch up to them. I don't want to do that. I want to go play with them immediately. And weirdly enough, Guild Wars 2 actually has the unprecedented ability to do this because of the way leveling works, right? Like, ArenaNet could say, you know what? In expansion 4, we're actually going to have a totally new starting experience, and you start from level 1 in the new expansion, and it's okay because everyone can just get scaled down, right? The game is really interesting in the way it can actually handle this, or that would be a very extreme way of doing it, but yeah, they could completely change the way new players enter the game, and mean that they get a much more polished, more modern experience. They can go back and play the old stuff if they want to, right? I don't know. I mean, that's all I'm saying. Yeah, like we can start fresh.
That's kind of what they did in, Guild 1 days. You could kind of play them in any order you wanted, right? Like some people started with this one, and then they play that one, and that's one. It's kind of neat to have them be standalone, especially with a game being this old. Just having people be able to jump into the new expansion without having to play all the old stuff. Actually, very, very cool. I think you're right on the money there, because when you think about it, a lot of the NPCs have been kind of wrapped up, right? Like, you just listed a couple, but if you just go for the NPCs in your head, it's like, oh yeah, Red Dog's doing that thing, Kanak has his nightclub, Logan's doing this thing. They kind of neatly wrapped up all of them, almost. Like, Rox is gone, everyone's gone.
Yes.
Bram's done. Very sad about that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's a good thing. I know one of my personal pet peeves, not just like in Guild Wars 2 story, but just like in stories in general, is when it feels like they're constantly dragging things out, constantly introducing plot twists for the sake of plot twists. I think having a satisfying ending is really good, right? It's like you kind of feel like you're at the end of an arc. And I completely agree. I think it would be really cool if the new expansion, like, you didn't need any prior knowledge whatsoever. I think that would be a lot of fun, because again, speaking from personal experience, when I tried to play other games, like I've been trying to play through Final Fantasy as well, just because I wanted to see what it was like. Getting through the first, however many episodes takes 40, 50 hours. And the entire time I'm just kind of like, well, I have not seen any of the cool things that everyone's been talking about in the later expansions. So I imagine a lot of players that come to Guild Wars 2 feel something very similarly. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I agree. I could definitely see them doing that. I want them to do that. I want fresh Guild Wars 2.
That's also the hype thing about it, right? Because so far they've been kind of, I guess, retreading the Guild Wars 1 lands, right? And back to Canva, back to Alona. They kind of, they made sure to put a twist on them so that they're all creative and stuff. But I want to see something brand new. I want to see a map. And I'm just like, it's the first time I'm seeing that map, and I'm just, it's not nostalgic, but it's just brand new. I want to see them really sort of flex their creative muscle and see what they can come up with. And there's not all that history that they have to respect, but when they can just go wild and make something brand new continent. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Go
Sorry, I don't
ahead.
mean to interrupt.
I was kind of wrapping up anyway. Go ahead.
I was gonna say something interesting on the topic of new maps. I would be really interested to see them rework the mastery system a little bit, because I think, especially in the early Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire ones, when you leveled up your masteries, it allowed you to explore the maps in a new way. Right. Whereas I feel like in the Iceberg Saga, when you leveled up your masteries, you just get this beam that pews things a little bit stronger every time. And it's not really that impactful to the actual exploration of the maps. Right. It would be really nice if, let's say, like, I think even EOD kind of suffers from this a little bit. Like, I think outside of like the Jade bot trait line, I didn't really feel that big of an impact of the masteries on my actual gameplay experience. So if they were to, like, let's say, like, they're completely rewriting everything, it'd be cool to see what they do with the mastery system. I think like the best example is like the way they use the mastery system to help you level up your mounts. I thought that was a really cool idea in Path of Fire. So
yeah,
I guess,
they're in such a weird point. That's a really good thing to bring up here, just as a general point. Arena, in my opinion, have put themselves into the design hell with this, because when that expansion comes out, everyone's expecting another set of elite specs. It's going to break the game even more. That's going to be what? 45 classes that people have to learn basically at this point. It's going to make it unbelievable. Think of the poor build site creators. Okay, we've got to have a build for all of that now. Are you kidding me, ArenaNet? Can we please not? Right? They've got to do masteries for every season and for every expansion. And you're absolutely right with EOD. What could they add? They added like boats. But wait, you've already got the skimmer, right? They added the Jade bot, which actually was pretty cool, but it just ended up being power creep. Like, it's basically vertical progression, right? Is what like a very mild form of it. It's just a little bit. And you can go on zip lines, I guess. That's pretty cool, right? But a lot of the stuff like skiffs and like the turtle, it's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of cool, I guess, but doesn't really do anything that much. The Arborstone Mastery is literally, it just gives you free gold, right? That's what it is. It doesn't really do that much, right? Every week. When you buy your antique summoning stones, like they clearly struggled to make something actually useful. I think you saw that in Icebrood Saga as well, right? Like a lot of the Icebrood Saga masteries were either locked to the map or game breaking, like the Waystation stuff, right? Like that is the plague of open world, right? The action key to do some CC. And yeah, I think the thing that it really stands out that doesn't exist is player housing. Player housing will almost certainly be added. That's how we're keeping the lights on. That's going to make a lot of money, guys. You're going to get, it's going to be some big spenders there. But yeah, there's a lot of big questions with how Arena are going to actually handle these systems, right? And really, sell the game and make it exciting, because this is the thing. When you offer something to a gamer and then you take it away, it's like, wait, where is it? Give it back, right? If they do an expansion without elite specializations, ouch, that's actually going to go over badly, like really badly, I think. If they say, oh, we aren't going to do masteries, I think people maybe wouldn't be super bothered, but they'd be like, ooh, that's a little bit weird. Why are there no masteries? What's going on there, right? Like a lot of the stuff that ArenaNet releases is actually incredibly feature rich. It's like really, really a lot of stuff. They really throw it all at you. In terms of new content, new systems and stuff like that. It's pretty insane how much you get. But the problem is that none of it ever goes away. Like this is the other end of the no vertical progression stick that comes back to bite you a little bit. When ArenaNet adds something to the game, it's there forever, right? Gliding isn't only in Heart of Thorns, it's here forever. Mounts and Skyscale and Roller Beetle, they're here forever. You've got to design the entire game around all of that now, every single time, forever, right? That's really hard. Like, because other games, I think World of Warcraft in particular, right? They can add like a mechanic and say, it's fine. Even if it's a bit busted, it doesn't matter. It's gone in the next expansion. It's gone in 6 months or like 12 months or whatever, right? It's fine, whatever. Guild Wars 2, no. They have to live with their decisions. If they make a broken build in Path of Fire, yeah, guess what? It's still around today, right? And it's still destroying everything in the current meta. They can't just like delete Scourge from the game. They can't say, oh yeah, that Firebrand class, it's gone, right? It's just deleted. No, it's still here. And as time goes on, that's going to keep piling up and getting even harder to actually manage and develop, right? Yeah, now they've added mech. They've got to deal with that forever now, It's, yeah.
Nope.
Do you think that instead of new specializations, they could do like a new class? with like a couple specializations. So instead of having like 9 new specs, they have like 1 class with 3 new specs. Like I was thinking, like, what's like an alternative? Because I think they can do 1 more set of elite specs, but I think after that it becomes like genuinely impossible to balance. I think there's no way they can do 2 more. But yeah, just new classes maybe. Like you want to have something new to play with, I guess.
Yeah. I think one new class would be really awkward because we have perfectly 3 of every set right now. So I think if they did that idea, they would have to add 1 of each armor tier. That seems like a lot of work, but honestly, it's a really interesting idea. Like, let's just say, hypothetically, they're probably not going to do this, but just kind of as like a thought bubble of sorts. If they did that, that would be really cool because you don't have to, I guess, like rework the same character. It would incentivize people to maybe buy new character slots, which is, good for them profit-wise. And I think it would also force a lot of people to revisit old content, right? To like re-level up like, the old maps and get their hero points from Heart of Thorns. Because like right now, if you wanted to, let's say like you have a fully geared out like Mesmer or something like that, right? If you wanted to get the Force specialization, you only have to do the new content. But I guess with with a completely new spec, you'd have to revisit everything again, right? You would basically have to level a whole new character. So I don't know. It's an interesting idea, but I feel like that's a lot of work. Though technically, if you think about it, each new class has 3 specs based off of the last one. So that's 9 different specs, which is...
It's a lot.
We're just back at the start.
Yeah, that's
It's a lot.
That's elite specializations anyways. You have 9 characters right now, 1 for each one. So, yeah.
1 new profession. Yeah. Each elite spec uses a different weight of armor.
Oh my no! Do you remember when we all, or well, not us all, but a lot of people thought that Thief was gonna get heavy armor, like pre-EOD.
Oh, no. They got like Shroud. Heavy armor Thief. 2nd HP bar.
True.
There you go. It's done. Yeah, and the core class can't use armor. It's actually hardcore mode. You have to level 1 to 80 naked with just nothing. You can't. You have to learn to use stuff. Yeah. Now, the way you would do it, by the way, you wouldn't actually make it so you have to have a different armor set for each spec. The way you'd probably approach it, or this is the way I would do it, you can use any armor weight, but when you... but it basically gets normalized. They would hard code it so that when you go to 1 elite spec, it would give you the heavy armor value. When you go to the medium, it would give you the medium. When you go to the light, it would go to the light, right? That's the way you do it. Because yeah, it's complete insanity. It's complete madness. If you say, oh, you can't use your armor if you swap your elite spec, you're going to have to regear that one, buddy. Go get some heavy armor. No, that would be insane. That would not be good. It'd be pretty wild. Yeah. Like, and people are saying multi-classing. Listen, gamers, you don't want that. Trust me. Like, that would unleash hell upon the game. It's fun. It was really cool. It's a fun mechanic, but you have to design your game from the ground up. And even then, it will barely work. Like in Guild Wars 1, this was the case, right? It was from the ground up. It was designed with dual spec, and even then, the game was broken. Okay, it was like totally busted. You could do some ridiculous things in that game, and still can actually. Guild Wars 2 hasn't been designed that way from the ground up. You guys want to see that? Firebrand Scourge multiclass? You guys like mech Firebrand multiclass? You guys like that shit? Tomes and the mech at the same time? Do you enjoy that? I don't think you'd enjoy that. Well, maybe you would, but I mean, everyone else wouldn't.
I think they even sort of specifically stepped away from it because Guild Wars 1 was like a complete mess to balance. So when they made Guild Wars 2, I think they very much went like, we're gonna avoid those pitfalls from Guild Wars 1. We're not doing multi-classing anymore. So yeah, I don't see them going back to that and opening that can of worms yet another time.
Yes.
Still though, 1 new class, I could see it. I could see that.
I could definitely see that as well.
Still, instead of like doing 9 new specs, just have 1 new class, and then people are still a little bit happy, but you don't get the huge scope creep that's way more elite specs with calls. Do you think they could do 1 more set for the next expansion? Do you think they will?
I think there's design space for it. I think so.
Yeah.
Barely. Some of them, with some actually a little bit less. For example, look, I'm gonna do it. You know, like I'm sick of the bullying. I'm gonna give in to the Ellie mains. They could give Ellie a ranged DPS spec, specifically like a longbow or a rifle.
Yes.
Okay, they could give Warrior a proper healer, right? Like with a proper support toolkit, because it is really Warrior really lacks that right now, right? You can kind of do some cool stuff with banners and shouts, but it's like not really. There's some things you could do. I think there are some things you could do. It would be tough on some, actually. Like, some are really well-rounded. I mean, like, what would you even add to Guardian? It's not even a meme. Like, what would you add? Like, what does it not have? Like, Guardian has literally everything. Right? It would almost have to be maybe like a necromancer style thing. Like, it's the opposite of Guardian, right? Like, boon removal, right? Like, very focused on boon removal. Instead of virtues, you have vices, you know? But yeah, like some classes will be harder than others, but yeah, it's doable, I think.
I think they can do one more set, but 2 more, yeah, I would start to get really uninspired, I feel. Not much space left.
The big concern to me is actually just like the load on new players.
Oh, right.
One of the, you know, balance aside, right? Like, because that, I mean, look, that, it would be a clown fiesta, 100%. But the thing that concerns me actually is that when I think about what do players actually have difficulty with when they're getting into, say, endgame content or getting into PvP or getting into world, well, not so much world versus world because there's only like 6 good classes there, but never mind. When you're looking at kind of PvP and world and PvE, it's like, what the hell? There are so many builds. What do they all do? How do I build my group? This is confusing. This is insane. And there are going to be more. Like, maybe it was actually better in Heart of Thorns when you just played on every single boss, double Chrono, double Warrior, double Druid, 4 Tempests, right? And that was it. That was all you played. The only comp. The one comp to rule them all. That's possible because now the game is actually, and look, you know, let's ruffle some feathers here. The game is surprisingly well balanced actually in PvE. It's weirdly well balanced actually. I kind of was discovering this where I was trying to make a tier list together the other day. Didn't like it that much. We're going again for round 2. Everything is weirdly good actually. And that is in some ways really good, but in some ways actually quite bad because it means that now you actually have to know what all of those do if you're, say, going to make your own squad or you're going to do that. You actually need to know what all these things do and how they fit together, right? So a lot of knowledge there. And it's worse in PvP because now you go in, okay, like, oh, game number 1. Oh, I got my ass absolutely kicked by this necromancer, right? But wait a minute, now it's a different type of necromancer. I've got to learn all the different animations. Harbinger and Reaper are totally different, right? I've got to learn what Willbend does. I've got to learn what Herald does, how Renegade works, how Vindicator works. You got to learn every single spec in the entire game. That's so crazy for a new player. It's so hard to get into. And again, like I want to say that I'm not saying this is a totally bad thing. I think having all of these different builds is amazing. It means that you can almost certainly find a playstyle that fits you, that will actually quite closely fit your exact desired playstyle in Guild Wars 2. But there are also some disadvantages here that ArenaNet need to be very careful of, in my opinion, because it is a lot. It is a huge amount of knowledge that's kind of required to really get a handle on the games.
Yeah. Absolutely true. Just, I think also just, it sounds a bit silly if you're a veteran, but just the icons, I think already are like overwhelming for people. Where it's like, there's so many different profession icons. What is this? What is that? Like, just, yeah, and then it's already overwhelming right now. Imagine having like 16 more. That would get pretty tough at a certain point. Still, though, I think that if they don't, the shitstorm will be enormous. You know,
I think they would need to have, they would need to have something else really big.
Yeah, exactly.
To kind of like offset the, I guess, focus of the community. Yeah. I will say, personally, I've actually never really been all that interested in new elite specs, but I guess I'm a Mesmer one trick. I've kind of already, like, I think a lot of people know that about me. So it's like when I see them coming out with new specs, a lot of the times I don't really have that much interest in them until someone proves that they're very strong, right? Like a big reason why I actually recently picked up Bladesworn is because I consistently got beaten in DPS by people who played Bladesworn. And I think for a lot of new players, that's like how they kind of gravitate towards a class, right? It's like they either hear it through word of mouth or they experience it themselves. Like, hey, this build seemed really strong. I kind of want to try it out myself now, right? So I think it's like you said, since everything is kind of weirdly balanced right now, with the exception of a few slightly overpowered builds, like everything is at least playable. You know, you can like clear all content in the game with them. I think it's really hard to have one singular class kind of stand out from the others, which, like, you know, it's like you said, there are benefits to and against that. But I think a lot of the times when people come into like, I don't know, I guess like stream chat and stuff, and they're like, hey, do you have like a build that you recommend for me? And like the first question I always ask is, what's your play style, right? But then I think nowadays that even doesn't work very well because every class has pretty much the same type of play styles. So I don't know. I personally think new elite specs would be a bit overrated. I would rather have engaging content, like, you know, whether that's like end game content, new maps to explore, maybe like if they completely rewrote like the system from ground up, right? Like I'm pretty sure everyone can agree gliding and mounts were completely like game changing, right? It's like it was a game splitting moment. There was a life before mounts and then there was a life after mounts. I would much rather them spend the time to come up with another game splitting moment, whatever that might be. So
that's interesting.
mm-hmm.
It's also going to be hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways that's harder, right? Because you don't have the same structure. At least like with elite specs, you kind of just slap it onto a class. Even if it's not that good, then nobody's going to play it untamed. But like, you know, it's at least something and people will know it and they will expect it. To completely rewrite like a new system is much harder. But I mean, honestly, I would prefer it, but maybe that's too much to ask. So
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that with EOD, everyone was kind of like, what is the big feature of EOD, right? Like, what's the mount of EOD? And in the end, it turned out that EOD wasn't really one big thing, just like a lot of different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was fine. I think EOD is my favorite expansion, so... But still, like, the fact that they didn't have a big, I guess, like, game-splitting moment for EOD makes me wonder how many there could even still be. Like, I struggle to come up with anything unique and wild. Maybe player housing, like Teapot mentioned before. That could be the big one, I guess.
I was thinking... I don't know. Actually, I don't know what I was thinking. But I was going to say, one of the points that you brought up is, I actually agree. I think EOD is my favorite expansion so far. Like, I actually really like Heart of Thorns used to be my favorite, and I still like it a lot. But I think the big thing that EOD did for me is it just cleaned up a lot of things. It made the game feel more polished. It felt more cohesive. And I feel like the events, like, you know, the meta events and also like the strike missions and just in general, like, I guess the way they approached a lot of the design with like the story and everything, it just felt better. It felt higher quality. Right. So it's like, I think they needed some time to kind of go through and polish the old systems. Like, I remember when people got really upset when they like changed the build swapping stuff. Like, you know, like when you swap builds, you like lose the buffs and everything. I remember thinking like, yeah, that really sucks for the speedrunning community, but they've been going across the board with those types of changes, right? Like, they reworked the pip system in WoW vs. World. They like kind of took a banhammer to a lot of like the, you know, abusers of PvP, and like, you know, they reworked a lot of like the PvE things to kind of like remove a lot of the bugs, remove a lot of the inconsistencies. I think that was actually really important, but I would rather not have another expansion like that, because then I think you would lose the momentum that this last expansion gave. So
I think their goal is to do that alongside it, right? They've spoken about having a team doing this. I'm expecting to see more core world bosses reworked. I'm expecting to see more polish being applied to stuff like fractals and further tweaks to instabilities, and hopefully eventually a new fractal as well, right? I'm expecting to see more tweaks to raids and so on. And that, we know, they're going to rework rewards in world versus world. I think this is a very continuous thing that they're looking to do, and I think it's great. I'm totally with you, actually. I you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think in some ways, new content is almost a little bit overrated. I think everyone is over-fixated on things being new rather than actually fixing what's here, right? You know, I want to see them actually fix Whisper of Jormag. I want the meta events. I want people to actually do Serpent's Ire instead of just never doing it because it doesn't give you anything, and it's at the same time as the other event in Vavi, so no one cares, right? I want to see them fix like the Maw of Torment so it actually works and you don't just break it by using the Sky Scale, right? I'd love to see like the core world bosses become relevant and get reworked, just like they did with Tequatl and the Shatter, right, and so on, right? I'd love to see them like attack Triple Trouble and have it be almost like the counterpart to Dragon's End as a really challenging open world event. Where players can, start to get a feel for more challenging content in a nice, cozy, open world environment. I think stuff like that is super underrated. New content is important; it absolutely is, and I think that we are definitely in a bit of a time in the game that's going to be a little bit like, it's going to be a bit of a slog because, of course, we aren't going to get anything new until probably the new year, if I had to guess, actually. But yeah, I think fixing the game, it has been long overdue, right? There's loads of stuff in Guild Wars that's actually really good, but it's just broken, right? Or it hasn't been polished, hasn't been brought up to speed, right? So it just drops off in its relevancy. Yeah, fixing things. I give it a big thumbs up. Please fix the game, ArenaNet. It's quite good, actually. There you go.
You know what I want? I want them to add more fractals so that there's perfectly 25 of them. That way each tier makes sense. And then I could very happily say, okay, you know what? They can wrap a bow on that and then never touch fractals again. And then I would be happy with it. I think that would...
Or do we need like 4 or something?
I think so. I think it's 21 or 22. I forget the exact number. But just one more strike mission. Or I guess just one more or multiple more for each tier so that you have one per level.
Ooh.
So...
That's my
hope.
Tier 5 fractals.
Mm-hmm.
A billion fractals. They add a challenge mode to every fractal.
It's actually wild though. I think there was a Twitch chat message from Grouch that I've been seeing like on the subreddits and stuff about how the game is doing really well right now.
Yes.
I think the message says something like there's more people playing now than around EOD or something.
That's correct.
Which is like wow, because like we've been talking about this, but they haven't really been releasing new content since EOD. They've been doing season 1, but for a lot of us that's not new content. But they've been just steadily fixing the game, right? And that kind of goes to show how good that is. I actually think they fixed a lot of really good stuff. They've been addressing a lot of stuff that I guess like we've been talking about on TeaTime actually. Like, they've been working on stuff
they listen
like
to us.
Rewards and stuff. Yeah, we totally determine what happens on this show. 100%. No.
And we're whispering in the ArenaNet devs' ears. We're the secret ones pulling the strings on the background. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's both the polish and their increased marketing. I mean, who would have thought, spending money to convince people to play the game actually gets people to play the game. But yeah, I guess that we don't have to talk about that right now, but that would be a topic that I'd like to talk about later. It's just all of the stuff that they've been doing to like get more eyes on the game. Right, it's just like the increased sponsorships, the Twitch drops, the partnered streams that they've been doing, the Steam release, just in general, like the increased advertisement. Like I remember someone told me that apparently they saw the Guild Wars 2 like ad or something like that when they were scrolling past Reddit, and I was like, whoa, they're actually targeting the demographic of people that play the game. I think that has a really, really big impact on like the total player number. In a lot of ways, actually, I think more than just the expansion, because it's like, if you say, okay, there's a new expansion, then the existing players are thinking, oh, wow, we get more content and stuff, right? And like, you might have a few new people that would say, oh, you can, or like, the game is not dead. Like, they're actually still releasing content and stuff. But I think what actually gets it in the eyes of people that haven't even considered the game is the core things, the things that already exist. So.
Yeah, the base systems, right? Like that's what powers the game. I completely agree. And yeah, I think in a way, I'm almost not that super surprised that there's loads of people playing the game right now, because I think what's happened with EOD and definitely with Steam actually is that players have gone, oh yeah, that game exists. And now they're coming back and they're playing through everything that they've missed. And it's obviously a lot, right? Like a lot of players kind of play for maybe a few months and then quit, and they've come back now. And I think what's really interesting about that is that the reason I think that's so effective is that a lot of the things that probably caused them to quit got fixed, right, when they were gone. And now that they're back and they're going, oh yeah, this game's actually really cool. And they're playing through all of it. So I think there's a lot of returning players, right? There's a good chunk of new players, obviously. But I would say that a really large percentage of the player increase that we're seeing right now is actually players who just kind of remembered that Guild Wars 2 exists, right? And that's what, the marketing's helping out with that, the Steam release helped out with that, in expansion being released has helped out with that. People are just going like, oh yeah, I have that game. I installed that like 10 years ago. I guess I better go play it again, huh? And I think it's working really well. It is working really well for sure.
And I think that's the thing. I think that Living Worlds, while a lot of us like Living Worlds, I think Living World doesn't really do that. Like, it's like, oh, hey, there's Living World Season 4, Episode 3. That I don't think that gets a lot of, like, returning players to look at the game again. I really like Living World Season 4, Episode 3, mind you. I want more of that stuff. Because I think that's why maybe, sort of to circle back, with their next, I guess, like, Living Worlds, they might focus less on like brand new Living World maps and stuff like that, and focus maybe a bit more on on having people on like improving stuff about the core game. Actually, something that I think would be really likely is for them to use Canva a bit more, right? Because there's some stuff missing in End of Dragons maps. We don't have like a cool boat race in Kaineng or something like that. I've been playing a bunch of Final Fantasy XIV recently, and in that game, the patches between expansions, they don't actually add maps. They just take place in like the existing maps. They kind of just take you back there. I think that's what they might do. Like have like one, maybe like you said, like an expanding, evolving map, and then maybe have like content in the rest of Canva bits. Like, oh, now for the story, we'll go back to Kaineng. Now we'll go back here. Now we'll go back there. And now there's a boat race. I want a boat race so bad. Can I just talk about that? Like, I that's all I want, really. I don't even care about an expansion. I just want a boat race in Kaineng, and I'll do that the whole day, and that will be my entire stream. Like, please, ArenaNet, give me a boat race in Kaineng.
Boat races, not good.
What?
You know what is good? Making mount obstacle courses out of boats.
Is this like the Hardstuck variant?
This is the true purpose of the skiff. It is not to race. It is not to fish. This is what you do.
So you can jump from your raptor from boat to boat.
Exactly, from boat to boat. You go. Look. This is crazy. You go to Draconis Mons, okay? Because then if you fall in the water, you get dismounted, and you make boats into platforming challenges, and you have to leap and race across loads of the boats, and whoever wins wins.
This sounds great.
Big.
Actually good. I really like these sort of like random events you come up with yourself. I did like a hide and seek event recently where I made all my people hide as a scampi, as a shrimp, and everyone was like hidden in the Vinci's Reach. And the goal for me was to find them all in an hour. And there were just like shrimp hidden everywhere. Like a bush, there was a shrimp. And like on the roof, there was a shrimp. And in the seeding, there was a shrimp. Just everywhere. Actually, that is really fun content. I like that stuff a lot.
It is good, yeah. I like enabling the sandbox style stuff is really good. I think the more you do that, the better. I think that's why World vs. World is so much fun, actually, because you kind of dictate the story. You are the story. It's not about capturing 3 points like it is in PvP. You are you become the content. You become part of the game. I think stuff like that's really cool. Like in PvE as well, for sure, 100%. Yeah.
See, I really.
Go ahead.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Speaking of World vs. World, though, do you think that like world restructuring is like on the horizon yet? I really want that to come out because it's so much fun every time. Like, do you think that's gonna be this year?
No.
I'm very curious.
No, definitely not. No way. Yeah.
Like, it has to be kind of close though, right? They've been working on it for so long now. Like in the next 6 months, maybe.
I mean, world restructuring is probably approaching the part where it's done. But the thing is, they aren't going to just drop that. They're going to... Because they haven't even started... Well, they've obviously started it, but we haven't seen anything about alliances, the actual guild system behind that. We've seen that, oh yeah, you can link to your guild and get matched up. That's great. But that's not the whole thing, right? Like, the whole thing is going to be the idea that you can join together with other guilds, and then you can do that. I think we haven't seen an interface test for that yet. We've seen some like mock-ups, which is really cool, actually. I love how transparent they're being. Really interesting to see their thought process and how they go about doing it. But we haven't even seen that tested yet. There's still going to be a reward rework that they want to look at as well. They probably want to do some competitive stuff as well. No, I think it's a long way out for stuff like that. I think it's a pretty long way out.
Oh, that's kind of sad, but I think I agree. Makes sense.
I'd say 6 months from now, you might hear something about alliances, but I think they still need a bit more time with world restructuring.
Right.
It's definitely going to be next year. It will be next year. I'd say like you'll alliance stuff is going to start kicking off 6 months down the line, approximately, right? Like early to mid to late to never 2023. Nah, okay, I'm kidding. That was harsh. Yeah, I'd say kind of like early to mid 2023. You'll start seeing alliance stuff pop up.
I'm just, I guess, like kind of interested in this timeline in general, right? Like we know they started working on this expansion. We know that I guess like more stories coming. Like I'm so curious to see his next roadmap. Like what is gonna be on there? It's gonna be kind of soonish, I suspect, right? Because like you said, we're kind of done with the previous one now. Oh, it's starting to get very interesting because we're sort of going off script soon. So far it's kind of been like, hey, season 1, but season 1 is almost done. It's just, my excitement is like actually sort of through the roof thinking about all these things, like stuff like world restructuring, more story stuff coming, more maps, the expansion, and just absolutely cannot wait.
Maybe hot take, but I think the next few roadmaps might actually not have that much stuff on them. And I guess like I'm mostly saying that to maybe temper people's expectations because I think they wrapped up a lot of really big things, right? It's like, the 4 like big strike missions that's kind of like wrapped up now. The End of Dragons like expansion is kind of like wrapped up now. I think like balance patches will obviously continue to be a thing, and like Living World 1 is also kind of being wrapped up now and everything. I Hopefully not to like disparage, but like I think we're gonna enter a bit of a quiet time, like maybe like where they're starting the development on a lot of things, and maybe they'll tell us what they're going to start developing. But I have a feeling in the next few months, I don't think there's gonna be too many new things for people to explore. I think it will probably the dust will settle. So
There might be a bit of a gap, yeah.
Look what you've done.
Right.
Look at the chat.
everyone's despairing now.
You see what you've done here? Right, look,
we just have to make our own content. Just stir up some drama, and then we'll make our own content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's get some drama going right now.
Yeah. And I will also say, I think it's also like, I think that's not a bad thing. I think if there's constantly new, really big things that are constantly being released, I think that can be quite exhausting. Like I'm speaking from personal experience. I already finished HTCM, and I'm actually about to start a second HTCM prog group. That was exhausting. That was like a month of like meeting for like almost 10 plus hours per week. I had to take out a massive chunk of my life to kind of like engage with that kind of content, right? And it's like, I think that kind of energy, it's really hype in the moment, but I think it would become very, very exhausting very, very quickly. And I think it would also kind of like instill this fear, like, FOMO, or like, I guess fear of missing out, and like newer players that might not be caught up with that content yet. So I think having an actual rest time is actually a good thing, right? It lets people kind of take a breath, kind of like see like, oh yeah, okay, like now that they're kind of done with that, I can catch up on these other things that I've been meaning to do, but I haven't been able to do because I've been like, messing around with like the new stuff, like that sort of thing. So yeah. I think it also actually, I guess another thing I want to bring up is it would be a really, really good time, I guess, like in this quiet time to kind of see how people would engage with the content long term, right? Because it's like, if you're constantly pushing out new releases, people will naturally not do the old stuff, right? Like I think a lot of people saw that when EOD came out, Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire maps were pretty much abandoned just because everyone wanted to do the new things. But was that like kind of the natural state of those maps in like the years before? No. I think having a break would actually let the developers get like, their metrics, kind of like measure like how these maps would perform in the very, very, very long term. Like what is actually bringing people back to these maps after they've completed whatever it is they need to complete in there. So
gold.
Gold. I mean, yes, obviously rewards is kind of what I'm hinting at, but it's like, I think it actually goes beyond gold. Now, I think they've actually done some really, really interesting things with like the 10-year anniversary. We had to revisit like regions to do like events in. And I think that wasn't gold. It was just a cape, but everybody loves capes. So, I think there's a lot of things that bring, especially recently, a lot of things that are bringing people back to the old maps. And I think it would be a really good time for them to actually see, which maps people are actually going back to. So.
Yeah.
Oh.
What?
Something fell.
Yeah. Destruction is happening.
I think Don knocked
That's the
something
drama
over.
we ordered. Right? It's just dropping in right now to get some of that going. Yeah, kind of on that topic actually of open world maps. Are you expecting a type of open world map actually to be released in the next Living World season, or the next maps that come out? Because I think that one of the things that ArenaNet almost haven't done is kind of found like a full standard, right? Like this is what a map is going to be. This is how a map is going to go. I suppose in a way that's good, so that everything is really varied. But I'm really curious with what direction they're going to go in, because we've had a lot of different styles, right? We've had like the Heart of Thorns. It's just a giant event. You've had Path of Fire, where you just explore around a little bit. Living Story Season 3 was kind of, there's like a bunch of random events that you can participate in, and it's very story driven. Living World Season 4 was kind of like, there's kind of like a bit of a mixture, right? There's like typically a big meta event and loads of things to explore around all over the place. Icebrood Saga, you had some like big meta maps. Some maps with honestly not that much going on, right? And End of Dragons is, again, I think kind of a bit of a hybrid. I feel like it's almost like a exact hybrid between Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, actually. You've got a giant meta event, but there's also loads of stuff to explore and loads of little mini events. Are you expecting anything particular with how they're going to go about actually designing these maps? Is Dragon's End 2 on its way?
They'll stick to the hybrid for a bit. I think that they won't instantly go back to something like Dragon's Ends. Because traditionally they have been doing those big meta maps. Like, how many have we got now? We've got Dragon's End, got like Drizzlewoods, Dragonfall, Dragon's Stand. Usually it's kind of at the ends, right? Like usually there's kind of an expansion or a season, and then at the end you have the big epic finale. I think just from a story perspective, it might be weird to like, hey, it's the new story, and instantly we go fight a massive war. Instantly there's a really, really big boss. I think that just because the story might start a bit slower, we won't instantly get a huge confrontation. But maybe eventually, right? Like maybe they'll, like you said, maybe they'll increase the map size a bit or something like that, and then have like a cool meta or something. But I think that's kind of the winning formula right now, is having the exploration from Path of Fire and then also having a cool meta event. That's what we've seen with like Sightsong, that's what we've seen in Kaineng and like all of EOD pretty much, except for Dragon's Ends. So I think they'll probably stick to that. It seems to work quite well. People still really like those metas. They might even get done a bit more. I think more people probably do like Sightsong than Dragon's End, just because it's easy to like drop into. So yeah, that's my expectation at least.
I really like how some maps you kind of have to unlock them, right? Like I feel like every time you get into the map, you kind of have to progress it again. And obviously you can go into the LFG, find a map that is already like, almost progressed to the end, and then you can kind of just like hop in there. I've done that a few times with Dragon Stand, because usually it's quite empty, so I can get in right at the end to get all of the loot. But I think Drizzlewood is like obviously the best example of this, right? So it's like, I don't know. I think that kind of thing is really cool, because biggest thing is it incentivizes people to play together. I think that's the big draw of Guild Wars 2, right? Is that it's not really like a single player MMO the way you would, like, I feel like in a lot of other MMOs, you're kind of just playing by yourself with other people. So So I think with Guild Wars 2, there's actually like this sense of like you need to band together, right? You need to make a squad, someone needs to tag up, you need to organize like who's doing what event, all of that kind of stuff. I think that would be a really, really, really big draw for me personally. Like maybe not quite to the scale of Drizzlewood, where it's like this massive boss fight, but even I think like, smaller maps, like just this idea, maybe you have like 3 stages that you need to like progress past to like reach the later parts of the map. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think the map-wide coordination stuff is actually really fun, I think. It's really enjoyable. And particularly when it's like multiple boss fights going on at the same time. I think just running around just doing events, I feel like it sounds really cool on paper, but then it's like, oh, okay, maybe not. Like, it reminds me of stuff like Silver Wastes. It reminds me of like Verdant Brink, right? Verdant Brink sounds insane. It's like, whoa, you've got to spread out and cover all of this ground, defend all of these bases. And then what do you end up doing? It's like, okay, there's like waves of trash mobs running at you, and you just wait until the time runs out. Like on Silver Wastes, I actually think is just, it's like an even better version of like ASMR or like insomnia cures. Like, I actually don't think I could survive it. I genuinely think if I started doing Silver Waste right now, I'd fall asleep. I'd be unable to stay awake, right? Because you don't do anything, right? That you just trash mobs
You're
run at you.
making money.
Yeah, I mean,
But you're making money.
yeah,
It's the sense of pride and accomplishment as you earn your own gold by playing the game.
I burned out so badly on the Silver Waste in like season 2 that I just haven't been back. I go in there for an achievement and then I leave. I'm like, I don't want to be here. Too many bad memories.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm not thinking of something quite so grindy as Silver Waste. Like, I know there are a lot of people who actually really enjoy it just because it's relaxing, and a lot of the times they socialize. So I guess that's like more of what I was kind of aiming towards is in Silver Waste, if you join a Silver Waste squad, almost always people are just talking in squad chat. You know, like while they're like waiting for trash mobs to spawn, they're kind of talking. They're like, you know, just hanging out. And I think that to me would be a really, really cool thing if they could somehow focus on that more. Because I think Guild 2 is one of the few MMOs I've played where I actually feel like I'm playing with other people. Like I can actually like talk to people, whether it's like, you know, about the specific event that's happening, or maybe I've seen a lot of people talking in like squad chats, map chats about like, you know, the roadmaps or like the balance changes and like that sort of thing. And you can actually like talk with people. You can actually discuss the things that are going on with the game. And I think you can't really do that if there's no incentive for people to like band up together in the first place. So
yeah, I think it's really important so that the big meta event, because you're not going to be able to talk as much or just kind of chill out as much when there's like a giant meta event on, right? So I think it's very important that the meta doesn't eat the entire map, right? I think that's definitely a criticism you could drop of something like Dragon's Sand, Dragon's End, and so on, is that that's what the map is. The map is literally the giant boss. That's what it is. Nothing else, really. No one's going to be there. No one's going to do anything. I think that ArenaNet really need to, well, this is something that they do pretty well sometimes, right? Like, but they need to make sure that the maps that they release, you don't just go there to do the meta event, right? There's other things that you can do, like other activities in the downtime that are going to be going on that are going to be worth your time, right? Like little like mini event chains that like give you some good loot or something like that. I think you can go too far. I think that sometimes it can just be like a mindless grind fest, which I guess is okay sometimes. But yeah, I think it's important to have like a good balance of, varied activities for the players to engage in, not just fighting a huge dragon, right? We have a lot of maps like that. And ultimately, and it need to be a little bit careful, because the more maps they add, I guess the more that players are going to get spread out a bit, because events are inevitably going to overlap with each other, right? If you look at the event timer on the wiki right now, it's huge. It's massive. There's so many events going on. There'll be even more events soon. So yeah, they have to be careful with that.
Yeah. And I guess you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Actually,
Yeah.
I really want a JC map that is not Dragon's End. I want like a comfy JC map where I can just roam around and do random stuff. I've kind of got like a wish list of like places I want to go in Canva. Like I want to go to the JC.
Okay.
I want to see the rest of like the Xingje Island, because Sizing is like my favorite map. I want to go to the Battle Isles. I want to go to Sunken Kaineng. Like, do any of you have like a place you really want to go to, or do you not care? It's just about the content. Or
I think for me, a big part of it is I just don't really have the emotional connection to the story. Like I never really played Guild Wars 1. And I kind of mentioned it earlier. Like I kind of dropped in the middle of like Heart of Thorns. So I didn't have the early Living World stuff, and I didn't want to spend the money to buy the season. So I just started with the expansion, kind of had no idea what was going on. And really the only thing that kept me tethered to the game was the content, which I guess we're kind of like going back to what we were talking about before, where like it would be really cool if the next expansion or even the next Living World episodes didn't need you to have prior context, if it created the context right there. And I think I like story. Like I feel like a lot of times, like I kind of come across as, I just want to raid, I just want to strike mission. I like story. I play a lot of like single player story games, like on my own time. But the emotional connection has to be there. Like I'm not really gonna care about characters if I have no idea where they came from, if I have no idea what their motives are, that sort of thing. So if there were like side stories, right? Like imagine if instead of doing a completely new story, we kind of explored like, maybe we do wedding planning stuff for Marjorie and Casimir. Like maybe that could be the whole story, where you're just now a wedding planner or something like that. I think I would have a lot more fun with that, and I would actually be a lot more interested in exploring the maps for just the maps themselves. So I don't know. I'm not saying they have to do that, but just like that would be like an example,
Leaked.
right? Where I would actually feel
Strike
compelled.
missions are cancelled. It's all wedding planning.
That could be the strike mission. It could be that. That's how
yeah.
intense it is. I mean, preparing for a wedding is serious business. You could make that into a strike mission. It'll be some fun encounter design.
Easily.
Yeah. So, but I mean, not just like that. I was like half memeing, but like you said, if there's like new characters that were kind of like seeing like, you know, their character development being built from the ground up, I would probably have more attachment to the story, and I'd be more interested in just exploring them for just the sake of like, you know, getting to know them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Huh.
And do you have like a wish list, people? Do you have somewhere where you want to go, or
Elite
do you
areas would be
literally
cool.
care?
Yeah. Next strike
Oh.
mission. Kanaxai's still there, you know. Ooh. Let's get the Guild Wars 1 meme. So, you know, let's get the Guild Wars 1 nostalgia out there. Yeah, I think it'd actually be really cool. I think you can kind of lean into this, like, oh yeah, these evil eldritch forces, right? You know, that were being held back by Suwon. Now they're back. Spoiler, by the way. Okay, they're back. They're in the mix. Urgoz is back. Okay, let's go. Kanaxai is back. We're going in. Easy. I don't know. I think something like that could be pretty interesting. Yeah, I really like the kind of dungeon style areas, like the underground maps. I think that looks really, really cool. You know, like the stuff that I think about is like stuff like Deepstone Fractal. I think that looks epic. Like the fact that didn't have a challenge mode. Oh, criminal! I tell you. I think there aren't enough areas like that in the game. A lot of the areas are relatively open, right? They're kind of above the ground. I really like the stuff that is willing to kind of descend into the depths a little bit, right? And have this like subterranean style experience. I think stuff like Bloodstone Fen was like really cool for that, right? Because it had this like multi-layered kind of like dungeon theme to it, right? So I think doing something like that, particularly stuff like strike missions, could be a lot of fun actually.
The return of Tangled Depths.
I agree. I was just about to say that Tangled Depths was my favorite map.
Such a good map.
So I would love to see more
a good
stuff
map.
like that.
Yeah, that is one of the best maps in the entire game, right? Anyone who says otherwise, no taste.
Yeah,
I can read the YouTube comments already, like right now. I know exactly what they're gonna say.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is Tangled Depths had replayability that wasn't just monetary. You know, it wasn't just, I think it almost reminded me a bit of like Metroidvania style games, right? Where like when you revisit like old areas, but you have new tools to kind of explore it in a new way. That's really what I enjoyed a lot about Tangled Depths. I think if Tangled Depths didn't exist, I wouldn't really care that much about exploring maps. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe not quite to that level, though. I think that it's a little bit of a masochistic, you know, tendency to want to get lost in maps and then just die over and over again to trash mobs. But I think something that has a bit more complexity than some of just the plain open areas would be nice.
I like the maps being part of the game. I think that's something that gets lost a lot in modern game design. People go, the map is irrelevant. I don't want to actually have to play the game to move around the map. I just want to walk from A to B with no resistance whatsoever. But I actually personally really enjoy when the map is part of the game. Again, it's one of the reasons why I really like the way PvP in Guild Wars 2 plays out and the way World versus World play out, because the map actually is the content, right? The map is not a vehicle for the content. The map is the content, which is why I think in a lot of ways, stuff like the Path of Fire maps are actually really fun to explore because they are the content. It's why Tangled Depths, I really like it because the map is the content, finding all the little secrets, figuring out how to get to that hero point, get to that, get to that POI, right? I think that's just actually really enjoyable. I personally really like that. It's very immersive. I find it very immersive because a lot of the times the game is very gamified, right? Like you're like, okay, this is a video game, right? But when the game kind of pushes back a little bit against you, you kind of go, oh, hang on a minute, maybe this is actually real. Maybe this is actually not fake. It is actually a true experience there that you're having, which I think is really enjoyable. I don't like my video games to be overly open about being, I want them to pretend to not be video games, basically. That's what's good.
You sound like a WoW Classic player right now, kind of.
I am a WoW Classic player. I'm a big WoW Classic enjoyer. Yeah.
Exposed.
This is what I do like about that game. You know, sometimes the NPC tells you to walk 30 minutes to go and talk to another one. Right? That does happen sometimes. You know, that's real. You know, sometimes you're just walking through the land and you just get killed by wildlife. It's can happen. You know, it's good. It's immersion. You know, you got to get into the game there. But no, I think Guild Wars 2 actually does do this pretty well. Wait, someone asked me for examples of the game feeling too gamified. Actually, yeah, I would say a lot of the meta events feel very gamified. Like, I don't like the fact that you just AFK for 15 minutes and wait for a boss to spawn. Right? That's like, okay, what is that? I really like it when you have to actually do the map to spawn the boss. Right? That's really cool, in my opinion. And I think that stuff like where it just happens anyway automatically, which is how a lot of metas go, I think it's a little bit less interesting. It's why I kind of liked stuff like the Dragon's End preparation. I mean, that was probably a bit overkill. Okay, right, let me rephrase. That was definitely a bit overkill. Like, oh yeah, an hour of preparation? Okay, that's maybe a little much. But I think it's cool when the actual little mini events kind of connect to the meta as well. You know, and the Heart of Thorns events are kind of set up this way, but they not really, right? Like the chat Garant will spawn no matter what. But there is this kind of like sub-story that's going on. Like, oh, you've got to defend and recapture all the outposts, right, in Verdant Brink. You've got to do that in Tangled Depths as well, right? You have to do all the random peripheral events and do the Exalted challenges to get the armors to go and do Octovine. But not really, right? Like, I think they even nerfed it, so you have to do it even less, actually, after that. But yeah, this stuff is kind of cool. Yeah, he dislikes Olgoth because Olgoth is just broken, right? Like that just doesn't make any sense, right? And the boss is even that good. It's lame, right? Yeah, I kind of like it. I like it when the map actually connects to the event rather than the event just being like, oh yeah, it's happening by the way. You know, I like them to be joined and connected together as opposed to just being totally separated. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think a problem with the, I guess, lead up is almost always it's just a few people that are kind of carrying it for everyone else. Like I'm thinking of Octovine again, where it's like, you know, you usually only have 2 people in each of the challenge areas, and they kind of like spawn the armors, and then those same 2 people are the actual people who are engaging with the armors during the actual fight. I think it's hard to make everyone engage with the preparation, because I think even now, even with Dragon's End and everything, even though they kind of made it a lot easier, you only need to do 5 events, right, to get the Dragon's End contributor, and you get the rest of the 5 from the actual event itself. Even then, you have a lot of people that just don't do it, and it ends up, I think, diminishing the encounter for a lot of other people. But maybe that's a player problem, not so much a design problem.
Wow.
So
it's your fault for not enjoying the content. True.
Yeah.
No, but I think that's the thing as well, though. Like, players have different tastes, right? Like, everyone has, I guess, like their favorite type of map. Some people, they just like the Path of Fire, big exploration. Some people like Drizzle's Coast. Some people like Heart of Thorns Octovine, right? I think with a lot of these things, the key is just having content for everyone in a sense, like trying to just do variation, right? Like for example, this Harvest Temple CM thing. Just that's been on my mind a lot recently, but you know, that's like the type of content which not a lot of people will like, but some people will really like it. And if you don't like it, then there's a bunch of other content for you to like, I guess. That's something about Tangled Depths. You know, I know a lot of people really didn't like Tangled Depths, and there's a lot of people who do like Tangled Depths. So I think we sort of have to appreciate that these things exist. Like I personally, I'm actually not a huge Tangled Depths fan. I like Garant, but I get lost all the time. But I still appreciate Tangled Depths, right? I'm just kind of like, it's cool that there is a map like that. It's not really my thing personally, but for a lot of other people, it is their thing, right? Now, if all maps were Tangled Depths, that's when I would be upset. You know, or if like all maps would be Dragon's End, or if all strikes would be Harvest Temple CM, right? I think it's just, you kind of want to have a variation. And as long as you do that, I think you will make as many people as possible happy. So that's kind of interesting. Like if they only do one map, what kind of map are they gonna do, right? It's a big question, but who knows? Maybe they'll do multiple
They
maps.
can kind of mix it up though, right? I think the best example would be Bureau Marches, right? There are two very different meta events there, I'd say. Like one has
Yeah.
Drakkar, one has like this kind of siege defender event. It just totally plays out differently, right? I think they actually can have a good chunk of variety if they do that. Like they can kind of almost like split the maps by episode and have like one meta event here, one meta event there, or just have one half that doesn't have a meta event and just has like loads of little events that cycle around. And the other half has the big meta event too. So I think, yeah, I do think that, you know, like it's I suppose the slightly boring answer, but it's definitely the right answer. Like variety is key. You can't make every map the same. Otherwise, you know, that you're just going to alienate a bunch of players. Like keeping things varied and mixing things up is going to be really important for sure.
And that's something that I think sometimes people forget. Like, it's okay to not like a certain part of the game, right? Like, not the whole game is going to cater exactly to your specific preferences.
Why not?
Like, there's some people and they want the whole game to just be one specific thing. But you got to keep in mind, there's a lot of people who are playing. Everyone kind of likes different things. And yeah, we gotta, I guess, like, respect that. So again, I'm not a Tangled Depths fan, but I respect it, and I'm just happy that there's someone that wants to show me around when I'm trying to do map completion, you know? I'm just like, I'm glad that there's people who like this map and who will like actually know the way, even though I don't. I just follow you. That's the smart thing.
You just reminded me. I need to start organizing Heart of Thorns map completion trains again. I told my group that I would start doing that since there's a lot of new players running around right now with Steam, right? So like in a few weeks' time, they're all going to start getting into Heart of Thorns. Probably a lot of people are going to get lost, so then I can swoop in and, you know, be like, yeah, join the train, that sort of thing.
I want to join so I don't get lost in Tangled Depths. It sounds great.
Yeah. Can swap over to NA. And then you can come hang out with us and stuff.
Here's an interesting one. This might be a hot topic, and I am incredibly curious how this one is going to turn out when they actually drop this, when the next content comes out. Do you think ArenaNet want to make the game harder? I kind of feel like yes. It does feel like that. If I look at the Ender Dragons metas, right, they actually feel, I would say, significantly harder mechanically than previous expansions. Even though they obviously, like, Dragon's End got nerfed. And honestly, even discounting Dragon's End, if you look at Saitung, the timer is actually failable, right? Much more failable than other meta events. Kaineng a little bit less so. That one's pretty easy, to be honest. That's probably the easiest meta. But again, Ekavol, you know, you can get one shot, the clap, right? You know, that's everyone's favorite attack move right there. Dragon's End, obviously, being re-included is one of the harder open world fights in the game. They've tried, you know, they didn't, I'm actually surprised, they didn't bend on having to do Kaineng Overlook normal mode to get the turtle. You have to do it still, actually. I thought they would actually nerf it to the Aether Blade hideout one, but they didn't. You still have to do that. The strike missions are decently challenging. The challenge modes are also very challenging and pretty rewarding as well. It definitely feels that ArenaNet have tried to maybe teach players the game a little bit more and kind of get players to understand the game modes. And you see that with the improved tutorialization as well, right? Like they're obviously trying to nudge players along the path. And I guess the streamlining too, right? Like removing the unique buffs. They want the players to get better at the game. It seems like, you know, maybe I'm on copium here. I'm obviously hoping for some really exciting, really cool open world encounters that are going to be exciting to beat instead of just kind of completely falling over with no resistance. But yeah, I'm very interested in how that's going to go in terms of the difficulty of the content. What do you gamers think?
They're trying to prepare the player base for Wing 8, okay? That's what's going on here.
Yeah.
No, but you're so right though. Like it feels like they've been teaching people. Even like starting with EOD, they were like suddenly doing like a break bar tutorial and a combo tutorial and stuff. I was like, you know, they've never done this. And like you said, the achievements that they released last week, there's a lot of achievements there that actually kind of teach you the game. Like use a combo finisher, use your profession specific mechanic or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It definitely feels like they're trying to rise up the player base a bit. Also have stuff like emboldened rates. You know, like instead of just going like, you know what, like a lot of people will never get into raids and that's fine. It feels like they've been trying to make it more accessible. They've been trying to like make these builds easier to get into as well, right? Like they've been creating all these like simple builds like Power Mechanist, for example, that are really easy for people to get started with. But here's actually the thing that like I find very strange. I might be going off topic a little bit here. Why is Ritualist gear still so hard to get? Like, I feel like this goes against like all of that. It's like we've been trying to make the player base better, make the game more accessible. Oh yeah, you need a Ritualist back piece? Just make a legendary. I don't understand. I don't get it. Okay, I'm going off topic, but I agree. It's my point, I suppose. Feels like they're trying to raise up the player base a bit.
Yeah.
I think it feels a little bit weird to me because at the same time that they've been making the encounters harder, I feel like in a lot of ways they've been kind of dumbing down the game a little bit, which is, I think Guild Wars 2 has a very complicated combat system, right? Like there's just a lot of things to learn. Like I remember back, I could have spawned a whole bunch of people with this, but like Guardian signets and stuff, for example, right? Like very few people actually knew how this idea of signet share worked. And when they removed it, obviously, like, you know, you don't have to worry about that level of complexity anymore. So I would be really interested to see if they have more encounters that are focused on mechanics instead of the actual class difficulty. Because I think that's a big thing that a lot of, I think, veteran players kind of take for granted, is that a lot of people that have been playing the game for a long time, especially in the context of endgame PvE, they already have very solid mechanical skill, right? Like they're able to press buttons, they're able to see things outside of just like, you know, their skill bar. They can use their peripheral vision, they can kind of move their character at the same time that they're attacking, that sort of thing. And these are all things that I think are personal skill, like, you know, things that you have to learn yourself. No build is going to be able to help you bypass that. And I would be really interested to see them do more things like that, because that means that they could justifiably buff a lot of classes so that they are very strong. But even with those strong builds, you're not able to clear the content unless you, for lack of a better word, get good. So yeah, because I think a really good example would be, even if you like, you know, equipped a newer player with Power Mechanist, right? Like the OP class and everything, and then you shove them into Harvest Temple, they're gonna fail, right? Like they just don't have, like, I guess the experience or like the mechanical skill or like necessarily, you know, the game knowledge to beat that encounter with just their builds. But at the same time, Power Mechanist enables a lot of veteran players to focus more on the mechanics instead of just the, like, you know, their own rotations and everything themselves. So I think that would be really cool. I would really, really enjoy if they added more stuff like that. Maybe, obviously, definitely not to the degree of Harvest Temple. I don't want that to be every single encounter, but I'm thinking like, you know, Kinding normal. I think that was like the first time a lot of players actually had to engage with mechanics where they had personal responsibility. Like I've helped out with a lot of people doing turtle strikes just in LFG, and the number of people that like accidentally kill their group because they stood with the number on group is insane. And then once they like actually died to it, they're like, oh, that's a thing, that was my fault. So then they had to, you know, learn that mechanic and get better.
Yeah. You know, I slightly disagree there, actually. I mean, I think that is kind of the way it's going, but I think the ideal form of PvE is basically PvP, but the boss, but the, you know, instead of another player, it's a boss, right? I know that sounds a little bit of a pointless statement, but what I mean is I really like leaning into the combat system of Guild Wars 2 being really mechanically interesting, requiring you to understand it and to execute it well. I think that's actually a really important part of hardcore PvE content in Guild Wars 2, because in a way, that's kind of the point, right? Like, if you have this combat system, why not use it? I think there's definitely something to be said for stuff like puzzle-style mechanics, like My Trend, for example, right? With the cool bomb mechanic. I think that's a really cool mechanic. I like it a lot. But the problem I have with that challenge mode in particular is that once you know that, it's trivial. The encounter is now essentially totally toothless. It can't do anything to stop you anymore. What I really like about Harvest Temple CM is that it's not that way. This is why I think it's such a great encounter. Because if you don't have a good, if you don't have like solid mechanics, like button pressing basically, and you aren't able to engage with the combat system, you're never killing that, right? It's not going to happen. And even that fight, what excites me about Harvest Temple is you could go further so easily. That fight is very deterministic, and to be honest, you probably can get away with that just by just kind of grinding away at it. It will eventually die, right? I think you could push it way harder than Harvest Temple CM. You could make it way more fast-paced, way more dynamic, like way more PvP-like, right? In a way, because of the combat system of the game. But that's what I do like about it, is that, again, there's a mechanics check on Harvest Temple, as in like game mechanics, fight mechanics, like doing the greens, right? Dodging the attack, spreading out, right? Like stun breaking, whatever. Stacking the ads, using invisibility. There's like the strat check, brain check, encounter mechanics, but there's also a player mechanics check. I think to truly make an encounter interesting, especially long-term, and keep it engaging, I think you need to engage the player mechanically with how they play the actual combat system, not just the encounter. Otherwise, I think it's dead and then it's over, right? The fun factor like absolutely drops through the floor, right? Or the enjoyment factor. Whereas if a fight is continuously pushing you because of the combat system, again, a bit like PvP, right? When you queue up in PvP and you take a 1v1, it's not like, oh, I know you're going to do this, then you're going to do that, and I need to kill this bomb and then solve this puzzle, right? It's going to be different. It's going to be dynamic. You're going to have to engage. You're going to have to respond to what's going on. I think that is something that Guild Wars 2, I won't use the word unique, but I think Guild Wars 2 is positioned extremely well with its mechanical combat system, that it can make PvE more exciting than almost any other MMO because of the combat system. I think not capitalizing on that would be a colossal mistake, I think.
Just to clarify what I was saying earlier, I'm not saying that people shouldn't engage with the mechanic system at all. I guess I was more of saying, like, I would like for them to have more encounters that are more than just a DPS check. I think that's like the really, really big thing, is that I feel like, especially I think with I would actually put Mitrin kind of under blast here with it, is because, like you said, once you've solved the puzzle mechanic, the only difficult part about that fight is having enough damage to kill it before the timer runs out. That's pretty much the only engaging mechanic in that encounter. Same thing kind of with like Anka CM, so getting like the title where you have to intentionally fail the mechanic. The only like truly, truly tight, difficult thing about that encounter is you just have to have enough damage, and you have to have enough like damage uptime to actually kill the boss, which is actually why, for me personally, I find Kaineng and Harvest Temple to be a lot more fun, because obviously there is a bit of a DPS check. You can't just like bring 10 heal Ellies into Kaineng Overlook CM and then just hope to get away with it. But like you still have to do some damage. But the bulk of the pressure is on actually engaging with the fight itself. That was more of the point that I was trying to make.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, sure. I think we're in agreement. I like that. Big content. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of strikes.
Ooh, what have you got for us? That's true.
Oh,
strike mission.
Well, what are y'all expecting? There's been some whispering about it. Yeah, like thinking about difficulty and stuff. So I actually thought that because this strike is gonna be in Living World Season 1, it's coming with the final episodes. I felt like this strike is gonna be super easy. Like Ice Boots Construct, Ice Boots Saga, just the DPS golem.
Yes.
First strike people probably will do, like, it's in free to play. You don't even need an expansion. You actually pointed out before we started TeaTime, like, that people might not even have elite specs when they do it. I think normal is going to be really easy. TM is like the one I'm really curious about. Like, is this going to be hard? How hard is it going to be? Like, do any of you have expectations or like hopes for it?
My guess.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think my guess is it's gonna be around the level of Anka CM. I think it's gonna be hard enough to make, relatively casual players sweat, but I don't think it's gonna take like SC or something like that more than a day to kill. That's gonna be my estimate, because I think, in all honesty, I feel like it should be that way, right? It's like if you throw a bunch of new players into like a really, really difficult encounter and then they're never able to complete it, I think that is a bit doomer, right? It's like, what if they start thinking, oh no, what if every game is like this, or every encounter is like this? Oh, I didn't really have that much fun. I feel like another big thing is when people fail, that's a breeding ground for toxicity, right? People start flaming each other, start being toxic to each other, like that sort of thing. I think I am hoping that it's not so insanely difficult that, like, players rage quit off of it. But it would be really cool to see them introduce punishing mechanics, not just like I think actually I'll just use the other strike missions kind of as an example with like, if you drop the lightning field on group, people die. I think that would be like a good example, right? It's like you just drop this thing on people. If you mess up, people die, right? But I think any more than that would be a bit sketchy, since I think, like you said, that's going to be the first strike mission that a lot of people encounter. So
I think that because I've been thinking about this during this tea time, because I was like, it's going to be really easy. Who cares? Even the challenge, I was expecting it to be very easy, kind of like like Anka, Mitrin, like nothing super crazy. But I've been thinking about it. I wonder if they'll actually make it a pretty meaty strike mission, because they're probably going to be basing it off the meta event-ish, probably a little bit. The Battle for Lion's Arch, where you fight Watch Knights and you have to fight Scarlet projections. Like, it's almost a bit like Veil Guardian in a way, actually, with like kind of getting different light polarizations to blast them down. Maybe a final climactic boss fight with Scarlet herself as well. I think it might end up being a pretty big strike. It might be quite long, with quite a lot of different mechanics in it, actually, as like a proper climactic boss fight for the end of season 1. And that definitely gives them a lot of room to play around with the challenge mode, right? It might not be super hard, but it might have multiple different steps and stages and mechanics, right? That brings it some complexity and brings it some excitement as well, for sure, I think. I've become a little bit more excited. I was like, okay, it's going to be cool. It's going to be fun, right? But it's not going to be Harvest Temple CM. And Harvest Temple CM is the only thing worth playing. No, okay, I'm joking, obviously. But, yeah, I think it will be fun. But I think they aren't going to go too crazy, because, again, it is going to be a very, very early on in the game. And I think it's worth noting that it is going to be free to play, too. They have to think about that. I know it's going to sound silly, but they do. They need to think about the fact that, yeah, players are actually going to be doing this, quite likely, with core specs, right? And that means that you're going to have to go, okay, well, core Guardian, is that as good as Firebrand? Don't think so, is it? Hey, core Engie's pretty good, apparently. Like, everyone's a core Engie fan these days. But yeah, it's a bit of a meme.
Yeah, I think kind of to address like what some people are saying, to make the normal mode easy and then the CM like super hard, I think it's mostly a continuity thing, right? It's like you could kind of see that with the 4 strike missions that they released with EOD. Each normal CM was progressively harder than the previous one, and then each strike CM was progressively harder. I'm pretty sure most of us could agree that Anka CM was not harder than Harvest Temple. I think there does need to be some level of continuity. And if you say, just for this one strike mission in particular to make this very specific subset of the community very happy, we're going to make the CM just absolutely unbeatable harder than Harvest Temple.
Let's go.
I feel like that doesn't make much sense, right? Like, I feel like just it doesn't make sense, especially if, let's say, I'm not saying they're going to do this, but it is a possibility if they added more strike missions, right? Like, let's say, with the level 1 through 80 experience. If they followed the same formula where, the normal mode is extremely easy, like almost trivial, and then the CM mode is absolutely terrible, stinking hard, then what are they going to do with the existing CMs that exist later in the story? So, yeah.
Yeah.
That is actually very interesting. Like, do you think they could make... we've got sort of 2 sets of strikes now. We have Iceberg Saga, we have EOD. Do you think they could make maybe a core, or not, maybe not core, but a set of strikes, like one from season 1 and then maybe one from season 2? Maybe stuff like the Balthazar fights could be a strike. Do you think they would focus resources on that?
It's got to be their goal. To turn the end boss of each segment of the story into a strike. If they aren't thinking about that, I'd be genuinely amazed. Mordramoth, Lazarus, right? Joko, for example, Balthazar, right? I think they'd be insane not to do that, because just think about the timeline. This always amuses me. Think about this. Strike missions are the big endgame content in Guild Wars 2, and you get one in Season 1, and then you get the next one in Icebrood Saga, which is 2 expansions and 2 living seasons later, right? That's quite the gap. That's something.
Then there's kind of because they can only do one thing, right? Like I'm just like considering, like they've basically got three possibilities for like future endgame content almost. Like after this, either they start doing new canvas strikes, I guess, like to do more canvas stories, make some strikes up based on that. They could go back and turn old encounters into strikes, or they could do Wing 8. I think Wing 8 is looking increasingly less likely.
Yeah.
I wonder
Yeah.
if to do a fractal though. Like it's been a while since we had a fractal, and just kind of sneak that in there. But that will be interesting. So just I guess like imagining a future where like we get some more canvas story stuff. We wait for the new expansion, and then maybe like every couple months we get like a strike based on old stuff. That would be very cool if they would just go like, "Hey, yo, the next strike is gonna be Mordemov. The next strike is gonna be Baltzar." That would be really exciting. I think actually
Mhm.
might be even more exciting than like new stuff. Like I would love to like see those fights be reworked. I'm actually really excited to see how they rework the Scarlet fight. Because you know that's some old content that was like 2013 or something, 2014. So I wonder how many assets they reused and how much is going to be like brand new, kind of.
Yes.
Maybe a new legendary armor set to
Open
incentivize
world.
people into going.
Oh, legendary ring, you know,
Full legendary
another
open
PvE
world.
one.
You have to complete all open world to do it. It's gonna be
You
big.
have to map complete 100 times for each set.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think that I'm. It's very hard to say like how difficult it is to go back and rework old content, but yeah, obviously they don't have to do like all of the animation stuff, like all of the and some of the ability design. And you know, look at something like Harvest Temple Challenge. I think this is actually a really, really good example. If you look at that, a lot of the difficulty is things that kind of got added in, but the things that got added in were not I guess super intensive in terms of like being new. It's like, oh, they added some green circles, they made the reds bigger, they made a bunch of stuff one-shot you, they added an ice guy, right? And they added the way more health to it, right? And they made everything just destroy you immediately. And they made the orb pulse damage and destroy you if you're too slow. Like a lot of that stuff is not like they created a lot of new assets, right? So they could kind of go back and do the same thing with Balthazar. Like I was actually watching a new player play through Path of Fire, and do you know what really struck me is how complicated some of the boss fights are actually in Path of Fire. That I was like, whoa, I do not remember this. And that was just kind of my fault because I played through Path of Fire with a group of friends and I realized that, holy shit, we just killed everything so fast, nothing happened. Because, you know, I was watching this like epic battle with this giant forged monstrosity, like this beast, this huge like forged tank. And I was like, wait, I don't remember this at all. When does this happen? And I realized that we just killed it instantly when I played through. So I didn't really experience it in the same way because it was just dead, right? And it's the same thing with everything. I don't remember any of the fights because they died immediately when I played through them. In fact, this was really bad in Path of Fire. I actually there's this mission where you're running through like this temple area. I think it's in Amnoon, and you have to prevent the Herald of Balthazar from like smashing people and killing all of the civilians. And I bugged it like 3 times in a row, and I just didn't understand why it was breaking. And then so I said, Teapot, you're doing too much damage. You need to slow down. It bugs out if you do too much damage to it. And I had to like AFK, right, and just do nothing, right, and wait for the boss to do its like scripted sequences, okay, to prevent it from just going completely wrong. So I think that it might even be easier than we think to actually juice up some of these old encounters because they're actually surprisingly in-depth already. Balthazar definitely is. Mordremoth definitely is. I think there's loads of stuff in Path of Fire that's like that. Joko is actually pretty interesting, like in his own right, like right off the bat there. There's actually a lot to work with for the encounter team, I think. It might be surprisingly easy for them to kind of throw stuff together and make it really interesting.
I'm very curious where we will enter the Scarlet Strike, the season 1 strike. Like, this could be like sort of an opportunity to create like a I guess like a generic strike entrance, and then you go fight Scarlet and Mordemov and Balthazar all from like one specific strike entrance or something like that. I'm actually, to me it seems almost a bit weird that we might have an entrance just for the Scarlet Strike. I'm just like, is this going to be a set? Like, we've got like daily Icebrute strikes, we've got daily End of Dragon strike. Is there then going to be like a daily Scarlet Strike, or is it going to be all set? Right? Like, I hope it's going to be all set. I hope they keep going and they bring back some of those encounters.
Yeah. I know a lot of the encounter entrances have places in the open worlds. Like, I think this is true for both raids and strike missions, but
Yeah.
I agree. I think it'd be really good to have a lobby for strike missions specifically. Just so that way, like, you can go between Icebrute Saga, End of Dragons, and then, like, we're talking about Scarlet's thing, and then, like, in the future, if they add even more, it's just having to... I guess maybe they just want people to buy more shared inventory slots. That way you can buy all of the portal tomes and everything. But it would be really nice if it was all centralized. I'm still waiting for the tech for them to use Mistlock Sanctuary as like a entrance into whatever it's called. Or actually, here's an idea for ArenaNet. Come out with a new type of
a new
pass.
pass.
Like a new pass. Let's say, like, instead of like Mistlock, which is supposed to be in the fractal realm, right? Like in the Shattered Observatory
The
fractal
strike realm.
Oh yeah, exactly. Have a strike mission realm, like in the what's it called? Like the chamber where they like it's always like blocked off, and then you fight the guy in the center. Have like a strike mission lobby or something.
Can you enter the aerodrome as a free-to-play player?
Aerodrome?
I'm not sure. I think so.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think you can enter raid though.
Yeah, I don't know if it even lets you in. Will it even let you into the instance, to the aerodrome instance? Because if you can, they could put it in there, right? They could just expand it maybe a little bit and put strike portals on the other side, maybe.
That would be very cool, like aerodrome update.
Because then the aerodrome could be like the ultimate PvE lobby. Because I think you're absolutely right here. There's like a whole bunch of different lobbies, which is a bit like, okay, what's going on here? You could even put the fractal portal there, because if you think about it, the fractal portal, the official one anyway, is actually right outside the aerodrome, right? You go through the portal, it's right behind you. So you could put a fractal portal in there. You could put the strike mission portals in there and just make it into the ultimate instance endgame PvE thing. And then you can sell a VIP pass that is like Omega Aerodrome. It's the aerodrome, but it's got all the NPCs in it as well. It's a 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah. I don't know. I just really want a centralized one, because I feel like, especially with newer players, I've been running like all welcome Icebrute Saga strike missions, and a lot of times people will just go to the wrong lobby. Like when we're doing Icebrute Saga, I'll see them sitting in Arborstone and they'll be like, yeah, I never got a pop-up. And then I'm like, wait, no, you gotta go to the other one. And then it happens the other way around too, where like we're in Arborstone and we're like waiting on one person, and then they're just sitting in Eye of the North and they're like, I'm going through the list, I can't find the one that you guys are in. It's just really confusing. I think especially for newer players, it would just be really good to have it all be centralized.
Will be good. And you can spend all your currencies there. And it'll be very confusing with 10,000 vendors. I like that. I guess they're gonna have to add a new currency, aren't they? It will be like red crystals, because core is red, right? So yeah. Man, that's kind of weird, isn't it? I guess you can convert them. You can like turn all the crystals into all the other crystals, but yeah, I guess it's a little bit frustrating, huh?
I guess just a big question is like, is this a one-off strike, or like, are they gonna do more? And when they release it, maybe they'll hint at it a bit. If they release a whole new currency for just this one, kind of suggests that they might do more. Just like, I guess like red is just in the files, right? It shouldn't be too hard for them to add that. But I could also just genuinely see them just making a give you EOD currency. But that'd be weird though, because people don't have EOD. Like,
I guess so, because if you're playing the core game, you don't have access to the EOD vendors and stuff. So it would have to be some sort of core currency.
I'm starting to get convinced we'll get like a whole set. Like, I might be getting too much into this now, but I'm starting to imagine we'll have like, I guess like the base strikes and then Icebrute and then EOD. Oh, that's hype.
This is a good point, actually. I found this out recently on my new account. Icebrute Saga strikes are actually free to play.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah. So they could get blue shards. Right? It could be... No, you don't. You don't need Icebrute Saga. That's the weird thing. You can't
Really?
do you know what is
Huh.
locked? And look, this is how you know where ArenaNet's priorities really are. They know what's valuable. DRMs are locked. You can't play those.
Don't
But
you?
strike missions are actually free.
Oh, right, because you used to need Path of Fire to go to the Eye of the
Oh.
North.
No,
But they
that's not true.
changed
No,
that,
that's not true. Yeah,
right?
you need
Didn't it?
any expansion. Yeah, this is correct actually. I need to correct myself. Yeah, you need to have any expansion, I believe, and then you can go to Eye of the North. I think. Maybe it's Path of Fire, but I thought it was any expansion. Maybe I'm
Right.
crazy. But it's something like that. So it's not like true free to play, but you don't need the story.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's cool though. I mean, I guess it makes sense that there's probably a lot of people who don't have like all the Ice Boots episodes, and then locking them out of like 1 or 2 strikes in the middle of a run might be a bit painful. It's so strange to me. Like, I just assume that everyone has all the content. Like the other day, I figured out, like they gave away a free mount skin last week, right? And apparently, you could only get it if you had Puff of Fire, which was like weirdly specific.
Because
is-
mounts are introduced in Path of Fire,
yeah,
right?
makes sense that it's
Mhm.
bound to Puff of Fire, but there are like some people who only had End of Dragons, and they had like you know, the Raptor and the Springer and stuff in End of Dragons, and they were like, why am I not getting it? I'm always like, I kind of forget that there's people who don't have all the expansions, right? I'm just like, don't you have
Wait.
them all?
Actually, no. The chat is wrong. People are lying to me. I'm sorry to cut you off there, Lara. Actually, not true. You have to be level 80 to get to EOT, and they did indeed make it free to play now. Strikes are officially free to play. Boom!
What? Oh my gosh.
That's
Huh.
how it is. I went on Guild Wars 2 wiki. The chat was confusing me. They were bamboozling me, and I have now revenged. I have now got my revenge and destroyed them. I have unbamboozled myself. The chat loses.
Does that mean that Bone Skinner has to be nerfed so that we can do it with only core specs?
Yes.
Technically,
just do it
blood
normally.
magic on Scourge is
True.
a core
True.
trait line. I think as long as that exists, you'll be able to carry people through that encounter.
That's true.
You'll be able to get through.
Yeah. There you have it. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. Yes. Oh, wait, but hang on. The plot thickens. Apparently, you do need Path of Fire to actually get into the strike missions. Oh,
So you can
shit.
just sit in the lobby, but you can't
So
do
you
anything.
can do MightyTeapot. Oh, hang on. See, look, this is why this is complicated stuff. Yeah. So what's free? What's core then? Core is like some of the NPCs, but yeah. Ooh, the counter bamboozle has activated now. So now you need Path of Fire to actually do the strike missions. There you go. How about that?
This is
Kinda
very
makes sense a
confusing.
little
It's
bit.
confusing us.
What about if you have Heart of
and-
Thorns though? What if you only have Heart of Thorns?
I mean, if you only have a Heart of Thorns, you can't technically buy Ice Blue Saga episodes, I think. I think like Path of Fire is a
Oh.
requirement to even do any Ice Blue Saga stuff, so I think you probably can't do the strikes then.
So with
My
them
guess
back
is
then,
it's
they have to add a core
Peter.
currency to this strike mission if they want to give it a currency.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's our conclusion. And I think they can do that because who are they going to add from season 2? Because they probably want to do a season 2 boss, right? And they could do Zaita.
The dragon at the ends from season 2.
Yeah, exactly. It will be the what's it called? Shadow of the Dragon strike mission, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
So
actually a
pretty
cool fight.
It is a cool
That's
fight.
actually a fun fight.
And again, you know what's super weird about that one is that it actually has mechanics. It dies very quickly, but it has mechanics, right? Where you're fighting it in the tree. You've got the mechanic with the light that you have to do, like to burn down like all the vines and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting, actually. Yeah.
I remember
Actually-
doing that the first time and actually being kind of like amazed. I was like, wait, there's actually like mechanics happening. Like up to that point, Guild's 2 story was always like kind of auto attack and you'll be fine. Yeah, that fight stands out in my mind. It's nice.
Yes.
I was also gonna say, do they need a currency for the strike mission? Could they not just have it like drop gold and experience and like some items?
Probably.
I feel like
actually.
because like if they had a currency for it, then they need to come up with a vendor that sells things with only that currency, right? And I feel like they probably don't want to. It's too deep. The layers are too deep. So my guess, actually, just thinking about it now, I think they're just gonna make it give you gold and experience. Oh,
Maybe.
actually, what if they gave you core Tyrion mastery points? I know a lot of new players are super starved on like mastery points. That could be cool.
That's true. They can probably throw it in there for sure, like a free mastery point. Yeah, I think it's a bit of it is intentional, right? Like I've been thinking about this a lot recently because of like the free to play stuff and new players coming to the game. Dude, the game is so annoying if you don't have expansions. Can't buy stuff on the TP. Can't do any of like the really overpowered farming stuff. Right? Can't get good gear easily. It's like really annoying to get anything in the game. It's actually really interesting. I think it's by design. Obviously, they don't want to make the core game too good. If they make it too good, then no one's going to buy the actual game, but they buy the expansions. But yeah, it is a little bit thing. They probably don't want to make it too easy to get ascended gear and like fully upgrade yourself in the core game, right? They probably don't want to do that. It kind of makes sense as well. Makes sense.
I am so glad that they added that like complete collection to Steam because there's all these new players who are like, there's a couple of them that are like, yo, how do I farm golds quickly enough so I can buy season 2? And then people are like, I guess you can do silver ways. I'm like, this is not a great experience for like brand new players, like just farming for the silver ways to unlock season 2, like slowly. I'm glad that they just added the option and that you can sort of avoid all of that stuff and just get everything at once. That was a good move. Very smart.
One price, play the game. Easy. You love to see it. You really do. You know what we haven't talked about yet? I think it's appropriate to maybe talk about it last. And I think it's worth talking about. This is an important topic that, you know, that the chat will be spamming Omega lol. But I feel like I must speak. I have to. PvP.
Oh.
ArenaNet actually need to kind of step in here. They actually need to step in here a little bit, okay? Because PvP is actually kind of getting to the point where it's actually in trouble, okay? I know that everyone kind of jokes about it and memes about it, but we're actually at crunch time, in my opinion. PvP is legitimately becoming quite scuffed. The balance is okay, right? It's actually not that. That's not what's causing the issue. The issue is that the population is so low that queue times go up. That means that rewards go down. Matches are becoming even less balanced than they already were, so it's not that much fun. More people quit. Queue times go up even more, right? There's a lot of stuff like AFKing. You don't get banned for AFKing in matches. You can like rage quit after one go, and then boom, away you go. It's really, really fucking scuffed. It's not good. PvP is in serious trouble. Like, I am, and at this point, I actually mean it unironically, right? I know that we kind of joke about it and the community jokes about it, but now it's actually not a meme. ArenaNet need to figure out something. They need to massively reduce the rewards. They need to add some crazy carrot to get into it. They need to look at moderation on making sure that players are behaving well, right? And they need to add a new map, something. They actually have got to do something now. Like it's getting to a bit of a crisis point, I think, with PvP. Yeah, which I really hope they don't leave the game mode to die. Right? I'm just, you know, going on my PvP rant here. I really hope they don't let it die, because for what it's worth, I actually do really think that PvP in this game is good, and it could be even better, and it really could be a proper, you know, actual competitive mode in an MMO, which is somewhat uncommon actually for MMOs. But right now there's a lot of wasted potential, and it's kind of being left to die. Even like players who are insanely dedicated and insanely, you know, love the game, played for years, even they are kind of like, okay, I don't really want to play anymore, right? Best example is Boyce. Boyce is like the person, if there is one player left in PvP just hitting the Q button, waiting for an hour, there's literally no one else, he'd be the last guy in the game. Even he is playing PvE now, right? And that is like your canary in the coal mine, okay? That is the rats leaving the ship, okay? Like, that's bad, right? If that's happening, then you know PvP is in some serious shit. And needs some love, you know?
I think they're trying to introduce fresh blood, right? With the decade achievements, like you have to play 10 PvP games, which I think actually kind of makes the point that you made even worse. If these guys are going to PvP for the first time because they're trying to get the achievements, and then they just get face roll Omega lol stomped because people are AFKing, people are botting, people are win trading, like that sort of thing, then they're never going to go back to it. Right. So it's like, I think right now, if there ever was a time to look at PvP, right now would be it, because otherwise you're just going to be alienating a massive like population that is giving it a try right now. Yeah.
I feel a little bit out of my depth when it comes to PvP.
Same.
I only started playing ranks like 2 months ago for the first time. I'm like in bronze right now. I was in silver and I decayed out of it. Um, but to me, it seems that just there's not a lot of excitement,
Mm.
right? Like it feels like just something tiny, like a tiny patch that adds something cool. I feel like it's been a long time since we've really had any PvP hype, if that makes sense. Right? Like it feels like it's just kind of there. There's a lot of work being done on all the other game modes. But yeah, just it feels like everyone's kind of forgetting about PvP abyss. All these issues that you're talking about though, like, people AFKing and stuff, I don't know anything about that. I just play like unranked for the most part. But yeah,
Yeah.
just I'm not even sure like what would be the best way for them to address this. Like of course like moderation is a big issue clearly. Is something I always hear people talk about. People not getting banned, people doing stuff like win trading. But even besides that, I feel like even if they like make that perfectly, if they fix that, I feel like still the hype wouldn't suddenly be back.
Yeah.
But at the same time, doing something like a new game mode like Stronghold, we've seen how that's ended as well.
Ooh.
I'm not sure, like, what's a way to make people excited about PvP again? Like, do they need to bring back esports? Like after all these years, Guild Wars 2 esports. I don't know. What you have way better of a perspective on this, I feel.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I think the problem is that, as with all things, you kind of need like you need your dedicated core audience
Yes.
for PvP. And again, I don't want to sound like too much of a doomer, but I feel like the dedicated audience has actually evaporated for PvP. I think people who play PvP now kind of play it for rewards. They only play it because they have to. They don't actually like it. They just play it because they need to. That's a lot of people. I don't think there are obviously some people who just enjoy PvP. That's the game where they like to play. But I think the really dedicated core audience is kind of gone. They're playing other games now, right? I don't know how you get out of that hole, right? I think PvP is genuinely a game mode in trouble. I'm not totally sure. I think that... I don't know. I don't really have that much to say on this because I don't have the solution. I'd have to actually go and look for examples in other games, right? And see if I could find a similar situation. If anyone knows, I'm actually super curious. Leave that in the comments if you know, like, an example of a game that kind of lost a core audience but then was able to rebuild it. Because I actually don't know. I'm not like doing this as a bit. I don't know what to do with PvP. I think a part of it is perception. To kind of contextualize it in a way that you gamers will perhaps you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. You know how the raid scene is nowhere near as toxic as people say it is, right? It's like the perception that it's this bad, right? The exact same thing is true in PvP. People view PvP as this fully corrupt, win trade infested, bot infested hellhole where people scream expletives at you every single game. It ain't actually like that, right? Realistically, there is some win trading. It would be foolish to deny that, but it's not rampant. It's not really going to impact your experience, right? The biggest thing that actually fucks you over is straight up AFKing. Because I've played a little bit. I've played some unranked. I've played some ranked on a covert account. Holy shit, do people AFK a lot in PvP? What the hell? It is unreal, actually. Toxicity is honestly not that bad. Not worse than other games. I've been playing StarCraft 2. That game is totally unmoderated. I've had some very creative language, has been used, right? It's something, right? It's something. It ain't that bad. Like, honestly, I want to say like 80% of games in PvP, no one even says a single word. And I mean literally a single word. It's just silent. Like, the game starts, you play, no one says anything in team chat, no one says anything in party chat. I think that's honestly part of the problem. I think people are almost like too scared to engage. So it becomes a very draining, solo, uncollaborative experience, right? In PvP. And I think that actually makes the ranked experience a lot worse because Guild Wars 2 and Conquest, it's very much, as a lot of things we've been talking about today, it's a double-edged sword. I think Conquest is a genuinely beautiful game mode. It's really good. It's one of the best PvP modes I have seen in any game. And I actually mean that. I'm not just saying that because I like Guild Wars 2. I play a lot of PvP games, and Conquest is excellent. actually, paired with the combat system of Guild Wars 2. The problem is that it kind of sucks when it comes to playing solo, because it is so team-oriented. It is almost too team-oriented, actually. This makes the ranked experience like, pain, because a lot of the time you're heavily reliant on your team, right, to kind of do the thing in order for you to do your thing as well, excuse me. And like, I think that's why people like stuff like 2v2 and 3v3 a little bit more, because you aren't so reliant on your team. You can just kind of do your thing, right? And you just play the game. Whereas Conquest, although it is a beautiful game mode and has an incredible amount of strategic depth, it falls a little bit flat in ranked, especially when games have a high ranking disparity in them, like with players from plat into players from silver, for example, because it doesn't work. Like players of like very high skill differentials, obviously that's no good anyway, but in Conquest it's even worse because of how complicated the game mode is and how reliant you are on your team doing stuff. It's super tough. I mean, I'm just kind of almost like just describing the issue, not really positing solutions. I would like to try and posit a solution, but it's pretty brutal. Like, PvP is in a very rough spot right now. Because people talk about balance. Actually, I'm going to push back against that. The balance is genuinely not that bad. Spectre is a really big outlier, and Bladesworn, for sure. Though, I think Bladesworn's probably a bit more of a menace, actually, in ranked, rather than Spectre. Spectre more is a very menacing and competitive play. But yeah, there are definitely outliers. But in general, the actual flow of the game isn't bad. Actually, it's not bunkery. It's not too fast, right? Like, fights take some time to progress, but things die, right? And there's not too much spam. It's still maybe a little bit too much ability spam compared to what I'd like it to be. So it's a little bit too fast-paced, I guess, in terms of what the hell's going on, or the CC that's going on. But actually, the metagame is solid. There aren't that many builds that are just like, this is a stupid build, I hate it. You're not dealing with Scourge. You're not dealing with Bunker Chrono, right? Anything like that. It's not bad. Even at competitive level, it's not bad. The issue is just honestly, the thing that's holding PvP back is very simple. There are not enough people playing the game mode. And that means that rank doesn't really work very well. Players don't care about the game modes. They don't try and get better. And so that means the top players stay at the top and just dominate. I mean, even look at the recent monthly AT. And this is kind of, well, not my fault, but, you know, this is my doing to an extent. Me and Roy cast the recent monthly. And we said, hey, can you guys whip together a team? And yeah, like all of the old players we were talking to, they made a bunch of teams. And they just crushed everyone, obviously, right? Like, all the players that were kind of practicing with their roster they're building up, they got completely demolished by all the teams that have been around for a while at this point, right? It's tough. It's very tough.
I'm actually kind of like thinking about this in my head, like, hey, what is, you know, from my own perspective, I'm someone that really likes this game, but PvP always kind of scared me. Like you said, there's this bit of a reputation. Like you said, though, in my experience, it's not as bad as people like make it out to be. I've played like maybe 30 games in the past month or so, and like there's usually maybe like 2 where someone was toxic, which is like still kind of sucks, but you know, it's not nearly every game. The thing is, I'm not sure if you can bring those like super dedicated people back, right? Those people that were the core audience that have like left. I think pulling those back will be very difficult. I think the way to like fix it is maybe just to like get in more new players, right? But the thing is, like, a lot of Guild 2 players, we're scared of PvP. At least I'm scared of PvP. I think a lot of people are. I feel like there needs to be something special.
Yeah.
Like, someone mentioned Final Fantasy XIV in the chat. They sort of did a big PvP rework recently where they actually managed to grow their PvP scene very significantly. Like, PvP was very unpopular in that game, and right now way more people are playing it. And I think a big reason for that is the fact that they have a battle pass. And not just like regular goals, not just like, hey, you get some gold, because as far as I can tell, the rewards in PvP are actually not that bad. It's actually pretty good goals. But like in Final Fantasy, for example, you can get like a special mount if you complete your PvP battle pass. So, like, I feel like maybe we need something like that. Again, you kind of get the thing you were mentioning, where you get like people that are purely playing for the rewards. That's, just like, I guess maybe enticing a lot of these PvE people like me with like a fancy cool skin or something. Something you can only get if you complete your PvP battle pass. Maybe something like that could help inject some more life into it.
Yeah. I
I know.
have quite a few thoughts. I wanted to let you guys finish you guys' piece first. So I guess the first thing is that I'm not very experienced with PvP myself. And I think a big part of that is because when I play Guild Wars 2, I started the game actually coming from League of Legends, which is a very intense PvP game. And I wanted something to relax, right? So it's like going into another game mode in the game that is not very relaxing is not really kind of the natural progression of things, right? So I think I speak for a lot of players when, that's a big motivating factor for why people don't even touch the game mode, is because in a lot of ways, this game is an escape from those types of game modes in other games. So that's kind of like point number one. Point number two is the only time I do play PvP in League of Legends nowadays is a game mode called ARAM, which is basically just glorified team fighting. You just chuck people at each other and there's mass chaos and people are just killing each other. And then you revive in like 10 seconds and then you come back and you just like get into the battle again. Honestly, I would actually really enjoy that, because I think a big problem with PvP is that there's a sense that you need to win. Otherwise, people are going to get mad at you. I think that's a really, really big driving force of like the fear for why people don't play PvP, because there's a lot of strategy involved, right? Like you have to go far, you have to go mid, you have to go close. Someone has to like rotate. You have to do all of these like random things. And for a new player that doesn't know what that means, it's really intimidating. So, and I think in a lot of ways, it's actually like a bit diminishing, right? Because like, since there is this strategy in the game mode, you're not really focusing on the like gameplay of your actual class, right? Like I feel like for a lot of new players, maybe I shouldn't speak for everyone, but for myself in particular, I kind of shy away from team fights because I don't know what's going on. So I'm just like, okay, that point over there looks uncontested, so I'm gonna run over to that corner. I'm just gonna go touch that corner and like that sort of thing. So it's like forcing people to engage with like the PvP mechanics might be a stepping stone to get people to instead focus more on the strategy once they've kind of like mastered the team fighting. I think that would be like, kind of like second thought. And then the third thought is with the whole mount system, I actually think that would be really cool. Like kind of like maybe not a paid battle pass. I think a lot of people would be extremely upset if they introduced something like that. But what if they had like a PvP reward track that gave you like a different type of mount, where it's kind of like trivial in open world, right? Like I think, for example, the turtle is in all essences kind of useless. Like it's fun to run people around with. It's fun to kind of show off, but functionally it doesn't have that much of a purpose in open world PvE, right? But like you could have something similar to that. Like maybe you just have this like, I don't know, a war horse or something like that, if horses exist in the Guild Wars 2 world or something like that, like that you get from PvP. That's kind of just like a show. I think that would also be really cool. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah, the llama. Actually, that's true. The llama.
Llama
have,
mount.
Like, a llama
big.
Mount.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah, so I don't know. Those are like kind of the main things that I was thinking about, because I'm just gonna be super honest. I have no intention of going like hardcore and like PvP game modes, just because that's not why I'm playing this game. I play this game mostly for the social aspect and for a little bit for like end game content. But if I wanted to go to if I wanted to play PvP, I'd go to a PvP game. That's kind of what I'm getting at, So
yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective. Because I've always viewed Guild Wars 2 as a bit of a PvP game. Specifically, like when I think, oh damn, what does Guild Wars 2 really do extremely well? I think open world PvE, I think PvP and world versus world, right? Like that is what really I look at as like the super defining features of the game that like set it apart from the competition, like from other MMOs. There are raids in WoW. There are raids in 14 and they're great, right? And there are raids in Guild Wars 2 and they're great too. But I think what Guild Wars 2 does way better than those games is PvP world versus world and open world PvE. So I think that, and don't get me wrong, I actually agree with you in the fact that I think most people feel the same way as you do, by the way. I'm not saying that's an invalid way or like unreasonable. Because I think a lot of people go, oh yeah, I'd go play a PvP game if I wanted to play PvP, right? That's a really interesting perspective. I wonder if ArenaNet needs to actually think about tackling that and making it seem as like, I guess maybe just developing it more, right? I think maybe people go, oh yeah, PvP, no one cares about that. ArenaNet don't care about that. They never develop it. They never update it. So people view it as a sideshow as opposed to like a main attraction of the game to an extent. Definitely a possibility.
Yeah, and I actually think that's
Mhm. Oh, yeah,
I was
sorry,
gonna
go
say, I think that's actually really interesting, is because it is a
Mm.
perception. I'm not saying that,
Mhm.
I'm like completely right
Mhm.
in this, and I've been trying to qualify that like this entire conversation.
Mhm.
So Guild Wars 2 might be a PvP game, but nobody knows that. Like
Yeah.
when people think of MMOs, like not just like Guild Wars 2, when you think of Final Fantasy, when you think of World of Warcraft, when you think of Lost Ark, when you think of all these things, you think MMO. And when you think MMO, you don't think PvP. That's kind of
Yeah.
like what I'm
Yeah.
getting at, is
True.
like I
True.
don't think of MMOs
Yeah.
as a PvP game
Mm.
style. But if you tell me like
Yeah.
Valorant, League of Legends, CS:GO, something like that, the first thing to come to my mind is I'm going to be playing against other players in that game. So that's kind of what I meant by this perception that I didn't start playing Guild Wars 2 because I wanted to start playing PvP. I started playing Guild Wars 2 because I wanted an MMO experience. So I think that's where a lot of players are. And obviously there's ways to make those players then enjoy PvP, which then people are talking about, like, different game modes, maybe balancing things differently, rewards, whatever it is that floats your boats. But like, I think at the core of it, the people that come to this game are not looking for a specific type of experience that PvP offers. Maybe it did in the past. I can't say anything for that, because I started playing after Heart of Thorns was released, so I can't say anything for like the release of the game. But at least for myself personally, when I started playing this game, I thought PvP was just kind of this side thing, and I had no idea what it was about.
Yeah.
So
I just want to clarify, because the chat ain't getting it. Emi is not talking about necessarily how it actually is. It's the way players perceive MMOs. MMOs are not viewed as PvP games. And look at WoW. Do people go, oh yeah, World of Warcraft, that really big PvP game? No, they think raids, worlds first, Final Fantasy, like Ultimate, Savage raids, story, right? Like that experience there, right? When people think about Guild Wars 2, open world, honestly, is the thing people think about. Not even raids, it's open world, right? Like we're talking about perceptions here. We're not talking about, oh, this is reality, right? P being toxicity games, literally any interaction where players can fail brings toxicity to games. If anything can fail, people will get toxic about it. Like that is reality. If you want to see toxicity, go and watch an Octovine fail in open world, okay? Like you will experience true hatred between your fellow human being, okay? Like that's how it is. But yeah.
I feel like I unintentionally painted a target on my back. I
Yeah,
hope people realize
you've
I'm not
angered
trying
them.
to be malicious with this. I'm not
Yeah.
saying like it's a bad game, but I know I've watched a few PvPers, and in fact, actually, I guess this is another aspect of it. PvP is a spectator thing, right? Like you don't have to play the game mode to enjoy it. I was watching like the MODA and everything, and I was actually enjoying it. I think it was a lot of fun to actually watch people and to like see the numbers climbing up. I'm not saying that PvP is bad. I'm just saying I think a lot of times, like, you can't just say, oh, the game mode is good. The game mode is good. The game mode is good. Everyone should play PvP, all that stuff. And then magically people are going to come over and play it, because that's just not, I think maybe it was back then, but at least in my experience, when I talk to new players and stuff, a lot of them, they're not here for a PvP experience. So it's like,
Yeah.
But how do you change that perception then?
yeah, I think
Right?
that's
Like
the question that we need to ask, is like, how
what's
do
like,
we
yeah.
change that perception?
Because
So-
actually something that's wild is Guild Wars 1 was kind of perceived as a PvP game, right? Like Guild Wars 1, it sort of had PvE, which kind of blew up, and then they did a lot more PvE, but originally Guild Wars 1 was very much like very, very PvP, and had like these world tournaments and stuff. They actually had like Guild Wars 1 was actually kind of like an early esports in a way. It was like relatively big compared to other, I guess, like PvP games at the time. This is before League of Legends and like Valorant. Counter-Strike was around, of course, but like I don't know. Again, like how do we change that perception? Like I kind of memed about this earlier, but like genuinely like esports, I feel like seeing them like push it a bit. It would actually be really cool if Arena did one of those tournaments again. They used to do this, right? Like way back at launch, they used to have like tournaments, and then they had like casters and stuff, like a big world tournament. Maybe something like that could help. But then I guess going back to my previous points, I think just a really smart way, you need to entice those PvE players to try it out, I think. And some of them will just go there to get their cool skin, and then they'll leave. But some of them might like it, right? It's the same as Twitch drops. You gotta like lure people in, and then some people will realize they like it and they stick around. So maybe we need Twitch drops for PvP. You know, like a battle
Ooh.
pass or whatever, like cool skin or something.
Ooh.
I think that's the trick here. I think that's the trick. Actually, I really like what they did with those achievements recently, where they were like, play 10 PvP games. I actually think that that's smart. I know a lot of people didn't like it because they were like, I don't want to play PvP, but you know, maybe some of those people who did that might have been like, oh, that was actually pretty fun. I'm gonna play more of that. I think just entice people to try it out, and then some people will probably stick around.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely think that adding in a bunch of unique rewards, adding in, like, it encouraged players to try it. I think what Emi was talking about with the ARAM, I think they should run stuff like a weekly 2v2 or 3v3 tournament, so players can have that outlet, because I think Conquest is a lot for a new player. You're going to like, oh, look, I'm going to go play the tournament and I'm going to play some 2v2, like, so I can regularly play 2v2. And then maybe you want to try out Conquest after that, after you've kind of got to grips with combat and, you know, been playing your class a little bit and pressing loads of buttons. Then there are some things they can definitely go for. You know, potentially add a new map down the line, or at least, like, fix some of the other ones so they can actually, you know, they're going to be good for ranked, all that sort of stuff, right? There's definitely some things that can be done with this. You know,
I don't even think it needs. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't even think it needs to be 2v2 or 3v3. I think it's forcing players to fight together. I think that would just be the first like situation where a lot of players would actually have to like face like skills from their own skill set. You know, it's like that's kind of what I meant by ARAM. Just like imagine if instead of having like what's it called, like 3 different points, imagine if you just had like 2 points, right? And then there's like a singular straight line in between the two of them, so you're constantly team fighting and stuff. I would actually play that. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. I think removing a lot of the strategy in a way, it actually makes the game mode a lot more appealing for me. Maybe I'm just too small brain, so
Yeah. You know, we have something like that for a while, like core charge or something. I don't play PvP. I don't know. Didn't we have like a deathmatch game mode for a little while?
Core yard. Yeah, I mean, but you had deathmatch with the 2v2 and 3v3 stuff, right? Now, the problem is that a lot of people would say, oh, okay, let's remove or let's just add another game mode so you can always queue up for 2v2 and 3v3. I think my concern with that is I think you would actually kill Conquest. If that happened, because I think
everyone would play together.
Everyone would play deathmatch. Yeah, I don't think the population has enough. There aren't enough people to support 2 game modes. Not even close now. And that would kill Conquest. And this goes into a super interesting discussion here, because in my opinion, 2v2 is a million times more boring than Conquest. But the problem is that Conquest is way less accessible than 2v2 and 3v3. So it's a really fascinating thing. And yeah, it's a bit of a you think you do, but you don't. Because in ranked, you can beat the top players, actually. Because it's 5v5, right? You can actually win. You know, like the top players don't have a 100% win rate. They'll win like 80% of the time. But they won't win all the time. If you made 2v2 and 3v3... they are unbeatable. And I mean unbeatable. And by the way, that's not me saying that because, I just worship the top players. No, you can actually look. If you look at the 2v2 off-season and through the off-season, they will not lose a single game when they play with their team. They will not lose a single match. Not even one. So in some ways, it would make some parts about PvP a little bit better because it would be more accessible. But holy shit, like the high level stuff would be completely, you're not breaking into that. You're going to get farmed every single game, right? It's super tough. Like this is why this is such a difficult thing. I do really like Conquest because again, Conquest means that you have this 5v5 game mode. Allows you to win basically any game, right? Because you can't control all the factors. Where in 3v3, you just queue up as a 3 and you're never going to lose, right? You queue up, even if you queued as a 2, you're almost always going to win if you're really, really good. And yeah, that's good because that's skill deterministic. But you actually, in a way, you don't want ranked. This is going to sound really weird. You don't want ranked to actually be fully skill determined. Because otherwise the game mode it feels hopeless and honestly a little bit boring. Ranked is actually not about competition. And that's going to sound unusual, but it's true. Any ranked game mode with random teams is not really about this is super competitive and super skillful. It's about a It's about improving. It's about earning rewards. It's about practicing your gameplay, meeting players, right? And having that PvP experience where you don't have to, easily, without having to like organize your team and get a scrim going or join a tournament, right? Or that. It's an easy, accessible way to experience PvP. Automated tournaments are for competition. That's competitive. Ranked in any game with random teams is not competitive. So making ranked ultra competitive is actually kind of a mistake, in my opinion, because I don't think that's actually its purpose. But yeah, there you go. That was a weird tangent there by me. Like PvP is a very interesting topic to explore, in my opinion. Very interesting.
Yeah.
We are definitely the right people to talk about PvP with.
Because we would be the target audience for you, right?
It's true, yeah.
In a lot of
like
ways,
the people
yes.
that aren't doing it.
Yeah. I can circle jerk all I want with all of the PvPers and say, oh yeah, we love PvP so much. Oh, did you see that rotation? Oh, whoa, bat chest, whoa. Whoa, oh my god. Yeah, but that's useless, right? Like, this doesn't mean anything to anyone outside of the scene. Yeah, of course. I think it's really interesting to hear the outside perspectives, and for players who maybe don't actually, maybe who don't play PvP, because yeah, like that's like that. We need you. Well, please save us. We're drowning over here. Yeah.
If you give me a llama mount, I'll play PvP.
Exactly. We need to mount.
It can be a stationary llama that doesn't even move, and I'll play PvP. That's my deal to you, ArenaNet. Give me something cute and something derpy, and I'll do it.
Yeah.
Have you seen the turtle on a gem store that you can
That one is so cool. Actually,
Turtle
the chair.
racing.
Yeah.
I love it. Like that, but for PvP, basically. Actually, I would play PvP if that's like if I needed to play PvP to get that turtle, I would play PvP for like 6,000 hours. I would do it.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah, I definitely think rewards are good. I think we've said enough about PvP. But yeah, that's honestly, that's another tea time. Like that's another whole one there talking about this bloody mess, isn't it? Is there anything else that we want to talk about with Guild Wars 2 in the future? We've been going for a while now. I think it might be about time to kind of wrap things up a little bit here. It's actually, it wasn't that long, but it's been long. Time flies when you're talking about the future of Guild Wars 2. Nearly 3 hours. What the hell? But yeah, is there anything else that we want to cover? Anything else? Any final thoughts on this broad topic before we vanish into the ether, never to return?
I want drops to happen again. That's like the really big thing.
Yes.
I want drops to happen again because I was out of town the entire week except on the last day when drops were up, so I didn't even get to have fun with it. Yeah. I hope they do it again. Yeah.
I think we kind of covered most things, right? Something about the future that I'm very curious about, actually, tiny tangent, is like we had these drops that you just mentioned, and Guild Wars 2 Twitch has been popping off. Like so many people have been watching, so many people have been streaming. Like even now that the drops are gone, it's peaking really high, like almost every single day. There's almost like twice as many people watching Guild Wars 2 Twitch now. I'm so curious if that is gonna last. Like I'm really liking it. It's so cool. There's so many people around. I'm just like, are they all gonna go away again next week? Like are they sticking around for real, or next month we're back down? That's something I'm curious about. The future of Guild Wars 2 Twitch.
Yeah. Actually, that brings up another good point. I would really love to see more content creators. Like not just like on Twitch, but also on YouTube. I feel like Guild Wars 2 kind of suffers a little bit from being almost too close knit. Like everybody knows everybody, so it's really hard, I think, for new content creators to kind of feel like they can wiggle in there. But I feel like every time there is someone new, like I can think of at least 3 or 4 people that like just started streaming the game randomly, and then a lot of people went over to them just because they were new people. Like, they wanted to like see how they were enjoying the game. So I would love, I don't know if maybe there's like a hidden lurker here that considers streaming and stuff, but if you do, that would be really cool. So
absolutely, yeah. I think that I think it's just because we're in this super weird state of the game right now, where it seems like something is happening, but actually it isn't, right? Like to pull the veil back a little bit, because I've definitely been thinking about this as well. It's like, okay, who am I going to add on TeaTime? Right? It's like, well, I mean, I guess I'm just kind of force Emi and Lara to do it again, I guess. I guess another sneb time, right? Like a lot of the people that I talk to a lot of the time are not super engaged right now. They're taking a break, right? They are all gone, right? Yeah, it's weird. It is very unusual
All my
because
friends quit the game.
it feels like an exciting time from our perspective, I think, because things are kind of moving along and things are happening. But it's all a lot of the new stuff, a lot of the really exciting stuff kind of hasn't happened yet, right? We're in this this transformation period in Guild Wars 2 where it kind of hasn't happened yet, actually. I think we'll see a lot more activity and probably some new faces in the new year, actually, when Season 6 kicks off, right? When we start getting that fresh content there as well. But yeah, I think the other thing is there are a lot of, this is going to sound, okay. Here's my angry comment in the comment section here, I guess. The other thing that I think that Guild Wars 2 does lack a little bit is content creators that have strong opinions. I think there are a lot of content creators, but a lot of it is guide content, right? And look, guides are great. I got nothing against guides, guys. And I think they're excellent. I think Guild Wars 2 needs more guides, in fact. But what I think is lacking in Guild Wars 2 is actually commentary style channels, right? Where people are remarking on what's going on, right? And discussing topics and having arguments and debates and conversations about the game, discussing stuff, right? That's the half of content creation that's missing because almost everything is very guide focused, which again is fine. Again, we need more guides, right? Build guides, right? Mechanical guides, like how to beat strike missions, how to beat raids, how to get gear, right? How to do this, how to do that, how to do whatever, right? But yeah, I think that certainly what maybe makes it seem very quiet is that we don't have the kind of conversational style stuff, like the kind of commentary, the meta commentary stuff that goes along with the game, right? And I think you have a lot of that in other MMOs, but I do think it's lacking in Guild Wars 2, which makes the scene perhaps seem a little less active than it actually is. Because I think there are content creators, there just aren't opinion content creators.
You just need more spicy hot takes.
Yeah.
Just all of the spice.
Wait, it's not even about like hot takes. It's kind of like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? How about this? How about that? You know what, Sneb, you're an idiot. Shut the fuck up, right? Like that's what you need.
Poor Sneb.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, but that's kind of what TeaTime is in a way, right? TeaTime is like peak Guild Wars 2 commentary content, I would say. And yeah, I mean, your streams kind of becomes the commentary stream sometimes, right? Just like people like having discussions on your stream and stuff.
Yeah.
Seems to like I always enjoy watching that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of content I enjoy. I'm obviously a little biased, right?
Yeah. You need a very tough skin though. Like I feel like sometimes the people that want the game to fail the most are the game players itself.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been ripped apart in YouTube comments before. So yeah.
Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting because I tend to be very positive about the game. I'm kind of a fangirl. I kind of like most things ArenaNet does. Like I will totally criticize some things, but I'm not a very critical person in general. And like what happens to me is that people will criticize me for not being critical enough. So people be in chat like, yo, why are there not more hot takes from you, Lara? There needs to be more spicy takes. And I'm like, but I like the game, okay? It's kind of all. So yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you have too many spicy hot takes, people will go after you. But even if you don't, people will also go after you. It's just part of it, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I get flamed by both sides, so don't worry, that always happens. Yeah, no, I will have videos where I simultaneously get called an ArenaNet shill and also a pure hater who hates the game and is purely negative. Yeah, that will be in the same comment section. So it's like, whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't please them all. You can't please them all. You just got to get in there and say a bunch of stuff and have a good time. And yeah, I know this will be a bit of a meme, but you kind of do need people like Biggs a Snake, right? Biggs a Snake, are you going to get a lot of serious commentary from Biggs a Snake? Well, if you read between the lines, maybe, but Big was an agitator, like truly unhinged, and brought content to the table. I think you do need some actually just crazy people, right? In the scene as well. I think that's fun. You got to have things get shaken up a little bit. You got to have some weird stuff going on for the scene. Everyone here is too sane. That's the problem.
Time to start the descent into madness. We can have like a whole character arc. I think Lara would be perfect for it. Just you go from super positive and then you just like derail into mentally unhinged, and then you just like
you're void walking now.
It'll be like
so the elitist arc begins.
I went kind of unhinged yesterday when I got the kill. Like I was really, really happy that we killed it, so I was like screaming. It was like really loud. I didn't realize it was that loud, but yeah, the unhinged arc has started clearly. The scream was the first bit of that.
Yes, it's good. I like that. Yeah, you need your nemesis. We need Wooden Potatoes back. Wooden Potatoes streams are absolute fire. Because he would debate his chat. It was so good. It was amazing. It was beautiful. I still remember to this day, Wooden Potatoes arguing with his chat about build templates. Some of the most fire content I have ever seen. Oh, beautiful. We need that back. That needs to return.
I hope he's all right. He's been kind of gone, just like vanished.
I think the return is soon, actually. The return is incoming.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, I like that.
I saw this clip of you telling Wooden Potatoes to just go stream, like easy modes. Don't do YouTube content. Just
low
chill.
effort.
Just stream.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, wow, is that what we're doing? Are we the low effort people in the Ghost scene?
YouTube, you know this. YouTube videos are hard, okay? That's really hard. I just yell at the camera.
Same, honestly.
But anyway, I think that's probably a good place to stop, I think, to wrap things up about now. So, gamers, thank you for watching TeaTime. TeaTime is dead, okay? TeaTime is over. So, thank you so much for watching, everyone. And, of course, thank you to my wonderful guests. It is Emi. It is Lara. They have arrived. They have shared their beautiful, massive intellects with all of you. Do exclamation mark hosts in the chat to learn more about them. And of course, I'll now allow them to have some, to explain, defend themselves before the comment section unleashes. Emi, what's up these days?
Nothing much, honestly. I've kind of been taking a bit of a backseat when it comes to actually training things, and I've been doing a bit more, I guess, like solo stream content. So things like hangout and raids, fractals, strike missions, that sort of thing. One of the new things, I guess this is just for everyone else to know, I have a big focus on endgame PvE. So I'm going to be starting up a second Harvest Temple progression group with a bunch of people that have never done HTCM before. So it's not just 9 people carrying one person through everything, but we're actually going to be progressing from the bottom up again. And then I'm also going to be doing a lot of open world PvE things. So a big thing on my agenda is I want to start doing monthly map completion trains again, starting with Heart of Thorns, possibly Path of Fire and End of Dragons in there as well. So we can scoop up some of the newer players that might be lost going into that kind of content. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
There you go. And it's second guest, new top 500 Void Walker. Okay.
I shall only be referred to from now on as Voice Walker Lara. I'm gonna rename my Twitch channel. It will be twitch.tv/Voice Walker Lara from now on. This is totally happening.
You know what you've done there, right? Now you've got to do, when they release another challenge mode, you have to do it again.
I think you can only rename your Twitch channel once every 6 months. So they better not release them too fast.
So you got to keep updating it to the latest title. But anyway, let us know. What are you up to these days? Where can we find you?
Hey everyone, my name's Lara. You can find me on twitch.tv/Joanity. I like Guild Wars 2, and we play Guild Wars 2, and we do all kinds of stuff in Guild Wars 2. I guess I have to learn PvP now because they need us in that game. I guess that will be our next goal, to become a PvP professional. No, but just like comfy, cozy Guild Wars stream. Check it out if you want. I'm also on Twitter and on YouTube as well. But yeah, Guild Wars 2, cool game.
There you go.
I like it a lot.
Look at the links in the chat. Look at the links below the stream. Look at the links in the YouTube video description. Click on them. Follow both of these incredible gamers. You certainly will not regret that. And of course, you can follow me as well if you want to. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can watch all the other videos. I got videos for days right now, guys. Okay? They're all over the place. They're all over the shop. You could click on all of them. And you can go and watch on Twitch. Streaming all the time. Most of the time. Unless I'm tired, then I'm not. But most of the time. I'm always fresh. Eternally fresh. But anyway, that will just about do it for all of us. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Follow, subscribe, everyone here. Hand over all your money. Hand over all your eyeballs. Kinda. And that's going to about do it. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. Click all the links. Follow everyone. Subscribe everywhere. And we'll see you next time. Take it easy, gamers. We are out. Woo.